So, feeling shit with like fucking pain in pain on my sinuses and also my teeth. I will get them checked tomorrow, but still playing some games and yeah, hopefully not the last stream or whatever I'm doing whilst alive. Yeah. But yeah.
3DO.
Why is it not showing? Also listening to some Destiny stuff because that guy actually knows what he's talking about when he's talking about Russia.
If America is taking the side of Russia in a conflict, it calls into question all American aid. Are we the baddies?
God, this is so fucking cursed.
Yeah,
Holy
kind of. You are.
Like, for him to say that after this blow up is like, feels so malicious. That's an insanely malicious statement. I don't know, man. Would they really have like planned the whole thing out? I wouldn't put it past them.
This meeting with Zelensky, Trump, JD Vance at the White House. I posted on my Twitter yesterday. I said the most surreal thing I've ever seen in politics.
I hated this, and I posted about this on Discord. I hated this.
I titled this video, Are We the Baddies? After a sketch.
Also, probably gonna play this campaign, which is very ironic considering news about trade wars. Trade has been the key to peace for as long as everyone can remember. Everything was going well until one nation stopped from trading with others. The reasons unknown. Maybe Russian ties. Or megalomania. Neroism. War broke out. 4 nations desperately needed resources, and it has raged ever since. A peace must be reached. And not by surrendering Ukraine.
From that British show, That Michael and Webb Look.
Our caps. The badges on our caps. They've got skulls on them. Are we the baddies?
And this comes at an interesting time because I was just in Poland and Romania visiting NATO sites and talking with NATO members. One of the sites that I visited was JTEC, or the Joint Analysis and Education Center. Our Joint Analysis Training and Education Center, sorry, I'm still messed up. It is basically
Years of brutal bloodshed had finally ended. Before, conquest had always been the first thing to come to one's mind when they wanted something. It never occurred to anyone that a person might trade with another instead of fighting. This morning, your spies reported that all the other nations have something completely different in mind, and that is to save up resources for one final stretch of war. So much for a peaceful ending. Do hope there won't be like World War III though. So, I don't know.
a schoolhouse that's founded by NATO, administered by Poland, and run by Ukraine. The whole idea is that Ukraine has learned a lot over the last 3 years from their war with Russia, and their instructors come to Poland to help teach NATO members what they've learned, things about drone warfare, robotics, unmanned systems. It's a really neat school. It's a great idea for a school, and NATO is learning a lot from these Ukrainian instructors. Sorry. While I was in Poland, I attended an exercise where I watched dudes in ghillie suits attack a trench line. And that seemed to me like one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard. Like, why are you wearing some hot-ass ghillie suit to attack a trench line? But what the Ukrainians have found is that wearing a ghillie suit not only breaks up your outline while you're moving across the field to hit the trench, it also lowers your thermal profile, so it makes it harder for drones to spot you. And that's something that Ukraine learned the hard way, and that they're sharing with us now that they have this school, this JTEC. Ukraine never really asked for anything more than weapons and ammunition. They have tested their flesh against metal in order to remain free from the yoke of authoritarianism. And at one point during the White House conversation yesterday, Vice President J.D. Vance asked if President Zelensky had ever thanked the U.S. for our help. And yes, Ukraine has said thank you. They helped found JTAC. And it's where we get to learn all of Ukraine's lessons to see how we can apply them to the next war.
Just to be clear, they wanted like a personal thank you, a groveling is what they were looking for.
So not only have they thanked us, they paid us in information. Also, every time Ukraine fires a Patriot missile, that data is going back to the U.S. So we've learned a lot on how to do air defense from incoming theater ballistic missiles just from that. The funny thing is that while this conversation in the White House is going on, I believe while the meeting was taking place, there's a funeral in Ukraine for a young American, a former Marine who went to Ukraine to volunteer, and he lost his life in the fighting. His name was Ethan Hurtreck. And this is how Ukraine says thank you. The real winner in this whole exchange was Russia, who seriously can't believe its luck. I mean, when you are handing content wins to RT, formerly known as Russia Today, you probably need to reevaluate your strategy, right? Kind of the scary thing for me was that my Newsmax colleague, Carl Higbee, posted on Twitter after the exchange saying, "America is so back." And while I respect Carl Higbee, I think it's a rather short-sighted view. Mainly because if America is taking the side of Russia in a conflict, it calls into question all American aid. If America could hold back weapon systems because the president feels slighted or snubbed, or the president, the person the president's speaking to isn't doing what he wants him to do, that could put many weapons programs in danger, such as our sale of the F-35 to India. And,
He's dying. It's all over, boys.
the world will be a better, safer place if India has American weapon systems and with India operating the F-35. But why buy the F-35 from America if just saying the wrong thing to the president could get him to cut off your supply of parts? And I think that's the real takeaway from this interaction. If I were Australia, who just agreed to buy 3 Virginia-class submarines from the U.S. instead of buying some of France's submarines, I would seriously start taking a look at France's submarines again. I mean, yes, ours are quieter, but they come with a fondue machine. I wouldn't want to risk a major defense platform on the whims of a man who was looking for what he called good television, right? One of the things that President Trump said to President Zelensky was, "You're not winning this." And for almost 3 years, I have said there is no win. There is lose, and there is lose more. Russia isn't going to win, and Ukraine isn't going to win. Russia literally can't win, because the day the war ends...
Where did that hero come out from?
But if America champions the cause of Russia, or even takes their side, or pursues sanction relief for Russia, then that gives Russia a soft landing and they can lose less. And that's about as close to a win as they're going to get. I think the only way Russia can lose less is if America supports Russia. America is supposed to stand for freedom and democracy, not good television. And the people of Ukraine have made it clear that they do not want to live under the control of Russia. And yet we just handed Russia a victory, essentially for free. Which begs the question, are we the baddies? If you want to help pay for my funeral expenses, grab the wind machine from Amazon or from Audible. It'll still help keep you busy until The Last Republic comes out. Also grab one of my Rock Out with Your Chalk Out air assault shirts from Bunker Branding. Thank you for watching. I'm going to go die now.
Rip.
Wow!
I feel the same.
One of the challenges for the next few years is we have to like we have to convince the American public because the administration, it doesn't matter anymore. So like somebody linked this in chat. Norwegian fuel supplier cuts off U.S. Navy, urges others to join. Haltback Bunkers. Haltbach Bunkers, a major Norwegian fuel company, has stopped refueling U.S. Navy vessels and is urging European firms to do the same. Like, for the current admin, this is just a win. Because it means, oh, cool, well, we're just not going to waste money sending our Navy anywhere. We're not going to send them anywhere, and that's fine. But I think you just have to give a bunch of W's to the current administration, and then you have to hope that the American people don't want America to just fully withdraw from the entire world stage. He disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he's ready for peace. And they shot a fucking video? Why does Trump want to increase defense spending when he's pursuing detent? With China and Russia? I don't know. You're not asking the right, or you're not oriented in the right direction. I don't think there's like a coherent thing. I think we just like say things and then we'll do things. Like we want to, like they want to cut the Pentagon because smaller budget good, but they want to boost the military because big military good. Even though these things are contradictory, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's not about like what is real or what exists in reality. It's just kind of like saying the things that make people feel good in the moment, and then you just move on to the next thing. So I think that it's probably detente. It's probably a waste of time trying to appeal to the current administration, and you just have to appeal, I guess, to the American people, hopefully. You only need like a few percentage points of people to make the party unviable, right? The Republican Party, that's all you have to do. You don't have to like convince like 50% of them, so. Destiny, from the USA point of view, what's the difference between Ukraine getting NATO membership and Ukraine having European troops there with a US backstop? Aren't they both tripwires for the US joining a future war via Article 5? My understanding is that Article 5 can only be triggered if your soldiers or your territory is attacked in your territory. I don't believe that Article 5 is triggered if your soldiers are attacked in another country.
A lot of people asked me to comment on President Zelensky's meeting with President Trump on Friday, February 28th, 2025 at the White House. Look, right now I'm sick. I went to urgent care yesterday. They said it's not the flu and it's not COVID. I'm stuffy, I've been coughing, I have a fever, so maybe I have some advanced genetically engineered Romanian freaking rhinovirus that I brought back to me from Europe. Right now I feel like I've been run over by a dump truck. And the fact is that my latest novel, The Last Republic, is on deadline. It has to get sent to the editor, so I need to get that done. So I'm going to make this quick because I need to get back in bed and die.
But convincing the general public means going against all news everywhere at this point. True. We need state governors to step the fuck up. Where's Gavin Newsom? Yeah, I don't know, man. There's a lot of like big things that have to change, and I just don't see. I don't even know if the will to change some of these things exists, so it's hard. Like, I think that Democrats, but like this is so hard because they love this messaging so much, or at least the ones that I see are the progressive. The Democrats need to drop all the weird shit about like the billionaires and the donors. Like, it's not time to cut potential funders out of the party that might align with you in interests. Like, this is so stupid, the fixation on that. And the Jesus, I don't know, man. It's a lot of dumb shit. All the left media that doesn't care about actual elections is stupid. The silence from past presidents is the worst. It makes it seem way more normalized. Past presidents typically don't speak on current things. I believe, did Bush not support Trump in 2016 or was it 2020? And that was considered, I think, a pretty big deal that he said that. Like, I think past presidents just typically aren't involved in current politics. It's just like a norm, basically. But I mean, yeah, they should be now, for sure. To be fair, Trump did win on that populism shit. It makes sense why leftists want their own populist message. Maybe a little. I don't know why the right is more, but it's more than just the populism though. It's all the crazy shit on top of it. Leftists have much better propaganda than center-left liberals, and they can harness populism much like Trump does. Yeah, but they don't like... It doesn't translate electorally, like anywhere. Like where are all of our communist socialist f***ing candidates winning elections? I think countering the Putin just wants peace narrative is an important one. Maybe going over all the different peace agreements that he's brought. But these people don't care about the facts. That's the difficult thing. Like, what do I... Like, every time it's like, oh, well, we just need to show them all of these things in the past. Like, they won't believe in any of it, right? Or they only need... Remember, on the conspiracy brain on the right, they only need one thing. They can be wrong on 19 things. They only need one right thing, and that's it for them. And then on the other side can be right about 19 things and wrong on one thing, and that's enough for them to discount it. Like, there's something else going on. Yeah. God, this is so fucking cursed. Holy shit. What if Putin breaks the ceasefire? Whoa! What if a bomb drops on your head? Like, what a crazy, stupid... People listen to this stuff in passing and trust the host to either push back or not bring on guests who lie. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess you just have to be of a certain, like... I don't want to say low education, because it's not really accurate. It's not what we're talking about. If you just don't have any baseline information about a topic, it's very easy for you to be misled, I guess. Every day, I go to bed, every night, praying for the deep state to save us. Please, deep state, where are you? Please, please, deep state, where are you at? Come, please.
And this is my podcast. The following
We've already watched this video
is a
before.
conversation with Satan, acclaimed CEO, entrepreneur, dear friend, and author of the recent best-selling memoirs, From the Depths I Shall Tempt Your Soul. Formerly known as Lucifer, Satan and I have become good friends, bonding over our shared love of literature, quantum physics, and creative methods of torture, like this podcast. As always, I hope to approach this discussion with empathy, to bridge the gap, promote open dialogue, and let love triumph over all, so that I can secure more AG1 partnerships. I'm Lex, and this is my podcast that I made.
I'll start talking.
29 minutes, bro.
Well, today seemed to be a tempest in a teacup with world historical geopolitical consequences. That seems like a contradiction in terms in many ways, but I think...
As a speaker of both, I can tell you Zelensky's English is better than Lex's Russian. I still can't believe Lex had the audacity to interview him in Russian. Bro, that was so cringe. It makes me want to interview some, like, Mexican diplomat or some bullshit and try to, like, flex my high school 1 Spanish. I want to have this conversation in Spanish because I think that it's better so we can understand each other, and then just, like, have a fucking translator for every other sentence. Oh my god.
That's what just happened. So my question is, was it a setup? Was it planned? Or are we really...
The whole thing... I'm not going to slow down this. The whole telling moment to me, but it's hard because Trump is so stupid that you could say fucking anything anyway. The whole telling thing to me was that line that he gave of, this is why we let it... I'm glad I let this go on for so long. I think that kind of gives the way.
United States of
Can
America.
I reiterate for the 7 millionth time, although it doesn't matter and I'm just a boomer screaming into the wind, how much I hate searching on the internet these days. We have all the advanced technology and so much shit. 10 years ago, if I would have searched for like Trump Zelensky interview or whatever, or meeting, I would have gotten the full video and like my top 5 results. Okay, here we get this. I just needed one more word, I guess. And now it's like clips and all this other stupid shit and what the and reactions and fucking Christ. But okay, we needed to add meeting here, I guess. All the LLMs and AI in the world couldn't figure out what I was looking for. Thank you. Oh, kept this going. There it is.
When you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
The trade was going so peacefully, you still have no idea why they must resort to war every time. After briefly thinking of what you are to do, you come to the conclusion that if they agreed to peace once before, then maybe, just maybe, they will do so again. After quickly writing a message to the other lords, you call for several messengers. Trump will wanna take Greenland one way or other. Whoa.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful.
Like, for him to say that after this blow up is like, feels so malicious. That's an insanely malicious statement. Which makes me feel like this was... I don't know, man. Would they really have like planned the whole thing out? I wouldn't put it past them.
With the world, and I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred, and I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, you know. I'd be so tough, but you're never going to get a deal that way, so that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
Hey, I want to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity.
Can you guys please stop saying they were ready to make the deal? Unless you can link me an article showing that Zelensky was ready to sign a deal with no security guarantees, you are wrong and retarded. I know that you want to link something that says, oh, Zelensky was going to Washington to sign the deal. Bullshit. There is no shot he was going to sign any deal that didn't have some kind of security guarantee baked in. I don't believe that. It would be pointless. It wouldn't be worth anything. I don't believe that that's the case, that he was probably going there with the hopes of signing one, but it was after getting some kind of security guarantee from the United States.
Is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask?
This is ridiculous, dude. It's nice to finally have some transparency. The transparency is truly welcome. What do you think explains the liberal media refusing to hold Trump accountable? I think that, I don't know. I think that they're still a little bit traumatized from being accused of, like, having Trump derangement syndrome over and over again. I guess it's pretty simple. Putin helped plan it out, got some questions that would trigger him, then told him to let him cook, and seemed ungrateful.
Country, and I think it's ridiculous that we're focused on this border in Ukraine. I got to be honest with you. I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another in country, and I think it's ridiculous that we're focused on this border in Ukraine. I got to be honest with you. I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another.
Right, let's bring in Tyson Barker, a foreign policy analyst who most recently served in the Biden-Harris administration working on Ukraine. Tyson, good to have you with us. If we can start from the beginning, what's your reaction to what happened in the Oval Office?
Well, it's clearly a moment that will live in infamy. President Trump had said it himself, and I think it's consistent with his leadership style at the end that this will make for good television. And I think it was, in some ways, a produced moment. I think in the run-up to
him saying that at the end, I feel like it reinforced everything I said about it. At the end of the day, these guys are influencers. Trump is the first influencer president. And all of this at the end of the day is just for clicks and attention.
This visit by President Zelensky, there were questions around whether the critical minerals agreement was being negotiated in good faith by the Trump administration. And the intervention by Vice President J.D. Vance in the Oval Office is, to be quite frank, in this way, highly irregular. So I think that there needs to be consideration as to whether or not this was actually premeditated.
One of the many things you allude to in this debate that was laid bare was the personality of Vice President J.D. Vance. What did you make of his involvement in last night's clash?
Well, he has become the tip of the spear for a specific faction of the Trump administration. He is somebody who speaks in an unvarnished way to the alt-right. He is somebody who's connected to alt-right media, and we see him trying to basically assume that role as ambassador for the bad cop side of the administration in multiple iterations, including at the Munich Security Conference a couple weeks ago. So that was
JD Vance? Am I missing things? Does he do alt-right stuff?
consistent with this role. But it's hard to imagine a situation in which he makes such a statement, and it was quite condescending, to be quite honest, to President Zelensky in the Oval Office without the explicit predetermined permission of his boss.
And yet, Tyson, Zelensky says that his relations with the United States can still be repaired. As hard as it seems to imagine at this moment, how vital is it for the transatlantic relationship that Ukraine and US kiss and make?
I mean, it's the Peter Thiel types.
Up here.
It's absolutely essential. The Ukrainians' war effort is completely dependent on the provision of materiel and economic support from the United States. There are still a number of lines of effort. Some have been paused, as we saw emergency energy assistance.
Do you think some EU countries will or should cancel weapons deals with the US in future days and weeks? Maybe, yeah, hopefully, to make... I think if Europe is going to move... Listen to me, Europe, okay, as the American whisperer. If Europe is going to make moves to punish the United States for Trump's actions, it has to be as soon as fucking possible. Because if you drag your fucking feet on it, and if you wait for years, and in 3 or 4 years, you finally start to do it, people aren't gonna feel the effects during Trump's administration. It can't be this kicking and dragging and whatever, and waiting and, you know, whatever, and then 2 or 3 years, and I was like, okay, fuck, we gotta get serious about this. Like, there needs to be a strong message right now. Like, it has to happen very soon, you know? Yeah, I saw that Norway is refusing to refuel our shit. I think there should also be a huge boycott of everything having to do with like Tesla and shit. I think people should boycott the fuck out of that. Although I guess it's hard because if you already have a car, I mean, if you have a Tesla, you can trade it in anyway. Fuck it.
Intervention by Vice President J.D. Vance in the Oval Office is, to be quite frank, in this way, highly irregular. So I think that there needs to be consideration as to whether or not this was actually premeditated.
One of the many things you allude to in this debate that was laid bare was the personality of Vice President J.D. Vance. What did you make of his involvement in last night's clash?
Well, he has become the tip of the spear for a specific faction of the Trump administration. He is somebody who speaks in an unvarnished way to the alt-right. He is somebody who's connected to alt-right media, and we see him trying to basically assume that role as ambassador for the bad cop side of the administration in multiple iterations, including at the Munich Security Conference a couple weeks ago. So that was
JD Vance? Am I missing things? Does he do alt-right stuff?
Consistent with this role. But it's hard to imagine a situation in which he makes such a statement, and it was quite condescending, to be quite honest, to President Zelensky in the Oval Office without the explicit predetermined permission of his boss.
And yet, Tyson, Zelensky says that his relations with the United States can still be repaired. As hard as it seems to imagine at this moment, how vital is it for the transatlantic relationship that Ukraine and US kiss and make?
I mean, it's the Peter Thiel types.
Up here.
It's absolutely essential. The Ukrainians' war effort is completely dependent on the provision of materiel and economic support from the United States. There are still a number of lines of effort. Some have been paused, as we saw emergency energy assistance.
Do you think some EU countries will or should cancel weapons deals with the US in future days and weeks? Maybe, yeah, hopefully, to make... I think if Europe is going to move... Listen to me, Europe, okay, as the American whisperer. If Europe is going to make moves to punish the United States for Trump's actions, it has to be as soon as fucking possible. Because if you drag your fucking feet on it, and if you wait for years, and in 3 or 4 years you finally start to do it, people aren't going to feel the effects during Trump's administration. It can't be this kicking and dragging and whatever and waiting and, you know, whatever, and then 2 or 3 years and I was like, okay, fuck, we got to get serious about this. Like, there needs to be a strong message right now. Like, it has to happen very soon, you know? Yeah, I saw that Norway is refusing to refuel our shit. I think there should also be a huge boycott of everything having to do with like Tesla and shit. I think people should boycott the fuck out of that. Although, I guess it's hard because if you already have a car, I mean, if you have a Tesla, you can trade it in anyway. You're probably wealthy enough to do it. Do you think that the average American cares about the suffering and deaths over there? Like, is this a possible valid attack in the midterms, or will it just not matter? I think in a way, Ukraine doesn't really matter at all to people in the United States. And I think in another way, it's like the most important thing to people in the United States. I think that the actual factual matters of things don't matter. Nobody really cares. Nobody knows what's going on. But the story and the narrative of what America is, or what America should be, or what America represents to the world, I think Americans do care about that. But again, the issue is that the concept of America has taken such a beating. It was basically, as much as I hate to say it, it was only the neocons that were holding up this concept of America being a good country. And it was like the left that was like, well, no, slavery, and Christopher Columbus was a bad guy, and we fucked over the natives, and America's racist and evil and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, you know, America, the neocons are there to simp for our big businesses and to simp for America, and the left is there to push us forward socially and, you know, hold us accountable, I guess, whatever. But now that the right doesn't like this country and it's like America, the big business and everything else, the left is not ready to pick up that banner. Even though Kamala kind of tried in being more positive about the United States, the feeling doesn't feel genuine or authentic there yet, so.
Was paused yesterday. The provision of future weapons is under consideration to be paused. This would have an extremely deleterious effect on Ukraine's war effort. But I have to say, and this is where Zelensky has a unique brand of leadership, and the man has stared death in the face and has a spine of steel, that they are not going to do anything everything to win the U.S. support. What the Trump administration has done in this case, and what President Trump has said, is basically, you are now at an asymmetric and weakened negotiating position. You are not in a position to ask for concessions in any kind of ceasefire.
Do you just reject the idea of the mineral rights leading to this administration's desire for security of Ukraine? I don't think mineral rights are a big deal at all. It's just some random retarded negotiating chip that they can use to bargain for whatever. I don't think it matters that much. And it's not like there are that many. Like, Ukraine doesn't even have that much in terms of exploitable resources for how much Trump seems to be making a big deal out of it. It's just not.
Negotiating position. You are not in a position to ask for concessions in any kind of ceasefire. And that seems to indicate that Trump is biasing himself in any peace negotiations on the side of Vladimir Putin. And that is obviously very worrying for not only Ukraine, but also Ukraine's European allies, who came out in force in the media yesterday after this event to reaffirm their support for Ukraine.
Yeah, Trump said Ukraine didn't have the cards to play. It did feel like he was also talking to Europe. Does Europe have any cards to play? If not, how does Europe arm itself with those cards to play in these negotiations?
Well, Ukraine's future and the beginning of this conflict, which started actually in 2014, was all about the movement of Ukraine geopolitically from Russia's orbit to the European Union's orbit.
Why does the Israel-Palestine conflict matter more to Americans in Ukraine? Older Americans have a very favorable view of Israel. I don't think Ukraine is the same. Most people, older people, would have just saw it as part of the former Soviet Union, and then its own country that had a lot of corruption issues, which it did for a long time. So we don't have that same attachment to Ukraine or the people of Ukraine, or religiously to Ukraine, like we do with Israel.
And in fact, if you remember the Maidan revolution, it was EU flags that the Ukrainians were waving on the Maidan. The European Union continues, with the UK and others, continues to be the biggest provider of assistance for Ukraine, economic and security, well, less security assistance, but economic assistance. But without the United States being a co-pillar in that, that would be a lot for Europe, Japan, Canada, and the UK to compensate. So the question is, do they have it within their stocks financially and also militarily to start to try to make that up? I think that there's thinking about that. You see that with Friedrich Merz's statement after the election, but it's going to happen on an extremely accelerated timetable.
Foreign policy expert Tyson Barker, it's been great to get your input. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you think the mineral deal is more to do with Trump needing to be seen as a win, like it's something to accept purely for optics and Zelensky wasn't properly clued in about this? I just don't know. I think Trump is just trying to extract as much from any situation ever. Like, don't let a good crisis go to waste, like that saying, except on steroids. I think that's just what it feels like. My coworkers are all 3 flavors of Trump supporters. I went really hard on them before the election. Do you think I should change tact and try to be softer? I waffle back and forth a lot. For people in your personal life, you should always be soft, unless you don't care about their opinion. You'll never change somebody's mind in real life by being like super brutal. You always have to just kind of be soft, ask questions, poke and prod like very gently, and try to appeal to their values. Like, oh, when you voted for Trump, did you think he would have said this about Zelensky? Or do you think it's a good thing? Like, should America play a role here? Or do we feel like Russia's winning? Or I don't know. Like, you have to be gentle.
Oh, Christine, this is a lovely house.
It's Christineth. Are you stupid or are you deaf?
Christina! You idiot! You come to our house, you get my wife's name right!
What?
Christina!
I don't even know what movie this is, but okay.
Vice President.
Why? Harry! You're a big social media guy. What's going on here? Why can only my left ear hear this?
Vance was criticizing Zelensky for not saying thank you specifically during that meeting, those 40 to 50 minutes that we were in the Oval Office. But certainly, you know very well, Secretary Rubio, your time as a senator here in Washington, that whenever Zelensky has come to Washington before, he has very much expressed that kind of gratitude. Just listen to this.
Thank you for both financial packages you have already provided us.
Really, all my appreciations from my heart, from the heart of Ukrainians, all Ukrainians.
So what can I say to American people in English? My English is poor. To say all my messages and all my thanks to you.
And thank you very much for supporting us, our people.
Thank you, United States. Thank you, America.
Ukraine is grateful to the United States for its overwhelming support.
Do you think you can make the argument that he hasn't said thank you?
Well, I think the vice president said he hadn't said it today. He hadn't heard it today in that meeting, and we were hoping that meeting would begin by thank you for everything you've done for us. We wouldn't be where we are today without you. We wouldn't even have a chance.
Please, I'd like to say something.
No, thank you so much, Mr. President.
Oh my God, he said it! There you go. That's what he got. Okay, that took way longer than I thought it would. I thought it was gonna be like fucking 30 seconds. Me.
Chance that meeting would begin by thank you for everything you've done for us. We wouldn't be where we are today without you. We wouldn't even have a chance to negotiate a peace without the help you gave us. By the way...
Also, I'm pretty sure Zelensky said almost this verbatim. We wouldn't have a chance without what the U.S. has provided so far. I think he said that verbatim. Is Rubio just quoting Zelensky in that?
Without the help you gave us when you were president in the first term, because President Obama refused to provide them defensive capabilities in terms of...
I don't even think that's true, but okay.
TV politics here. If you're just here for the pizza reviews, keep it moving. But I had to talk about this meeting with Zelensky, Trump, JD Vance at the White House. I posted on my Twitter yesterday. I said the most surreal thing I've ever seen in politics. Felt like I was watching Bravo TV. Just fascinating to see world leaders basically arguing with each other. With honestly the fate of like World War III in the world kind of in the balance in some respects. Now, before I get into it, that was just like the last 5-10 minutes. They're arguing of what I guess was like an hour and 15-minute meeting that was civil and friendly right up to the end. So it wasn't like Trump sat down as like wanted to be like gotcha and fight on cameras. That wasn't the plan. Now, having said all that, there's been 2 reactions to this meeting, and they both depend on whether you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump. If you're anti-Trump, you're basically saying this is the worst day in the history of America. We're basically the same as Russia and a dictator and Putin and evil, and it's a sad day when America like bullies a country that's been invaded, and on and on. And if you're pro-Trump, you're like, finally, somebody's sticking up for has been invaded, and it's a sad day when America like bullies a country that's been invaded, and on and on. And if you're pro-Trump, you're like, finally, somebody's sticking up for American citizens, American taxpayers. We're not just going to blindly keep handing billions to Zelensky with no end in sight to this war, and somebody has to basically say enough is enough, and we're not just your piggy bank. As usual with issues like this, I feel like it's a real gray area. One of the hardest things to do in all politics is decide when should the U.S. intervene with money, troops, whatever it may be in the world theater. Like, is it there's morality issues, there's safety issues, like if we don't jump in here, is this eventually going to create problems in the United States? I know we get the ocean, they're talking about the ocean, but World War II, when Hitler starts invading, eventually the war comes to us. So there's all these issues involved. For me, listen, I get Zelensky's country has been invaded. His troops, his countrymen dying. their country has been ravaged by Putin and Russia. I get all that. So it's hard to be like, how could you act like this, or not have some degree of compassion for Ukraine and what's going on there? Like,
why do people have the? I already know where he's going. I shouldn't. Maybe he won't go there. No, he is going. I know he's going there because everybody has this super cucked position. Like, I get this, bro, but realistically, what's going to happen? Like, f you. What do you mean? We're the United States of America. Like, that's never been an excuse for us before. Reality is not supposed to be what America has to bow down to and passively accept from the rest of the world, especially from losers like Putin. Why would we ever do that? It should be the other side. It should be Putin that has to go on Russian state media and say, listen, we were doing well in the war, like, we should have won it, we should have had everything, but I mean, like, the reality is, it's the fucking USA. What do you want us to do? It's NATO. Like, these guys are like 2 generations ahead of us on planes because we lied about where we thought our tech was at. Like, we can't do fuck all. Like, we're like, it's not fair, but it is what it is. Why are we the ones making that statement? If you don't want to be involved, then just get the f out of the negotiations. I don't know why fucking Putin and Trump need to go have their own little 2-person suck fest in Riyadh. I don't know why you have to do that. Just get the fuck out. If you're not going to go negotiate anything, like, imagine you're getting your ass whipped by some bully who's like, you know, 4 years older than you. He was held back. He's like 100 pounds heavier than you. You're some like 3rd grader getting the shit beat out of him by like 18-year-old. And you finally bring a teacher along. It's like, teacher, thank you. And then the teacher is there and he's like, yeah, wow, that dude's whipping your ass. And I see that that's happening. And yeah, damn, like, yeah, it's an ass whipping. Good luck, man. Like, what's the point of the U.S. even being involved in this? We're here to help Ukraine unilaterally, like, unconditionally surrender? Without even a security guarantee, then why are we negotiating at all? I just hate this cuck position. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with the US of A? What do you mean, what are we going to do? A billion different things.
Or not have some degree of compassion for Ukraine and what's going on there. Like, imagine if someone just invaded the United States, and we couldn't really defend ourselves without the help of other people. But having said all that, I'm on.
Lord Galen was the first to reply. His message read, Lord Vitius, I hope this message finds you well. I really have no quarrel with you personally. However, I do need the resources that are on your land. Take that, Denmark. Trade was getting way too costly for me and my people. No hard feelings, Lord Galen. Well, if any message was meant to aggravate you, this was definitely the one. If Lord Galen wants war, then it's war he's going to get.
Trump's side more than I'm on Zelensky's side here. This previous administration, Biden, has sat, beat their chest, warned, threatened Russia, Putin, called him a killer, a dictator, all the things Zelensky says. And what has that gotten us? Hundreds of billions of dollars given to Ukraine, and they're really no closer to ending this war. Seems like it just could go on forever with us footing the bill. I mean, again, the records say anywhere between $200-300 billion we've...
Which records? Oh, those are just Trump's empty statements that other world leaders like Macron have literally corrected him on, but okay.
Given to them for the defense, equal to more than all of Europe. So you have a new administration coming in, and clearly what the old administration had done did not help end this conflict at all. And Zelensky shows up at the White House, and you can say whatever you want about Trump. It's pretty universal. He takes signs of disrespect personally. He's very much about, you know, respect and other things. So Zelensky shows up, and he's wearing his sweatshirt and his customary outfit, which is his way of essentially saying, like, I'm at war. I don't have time to play politics or any of this other stuff. And one of Trump's reporters, who pro-Trump, he's like, why won't you just throw on a suit? And I think Zelensky's like, I'll throw on your outfit, your costume, once the war is over. For me, this is just stupid by Zelensky. Like, we get you're at war, but you're coming to meet a new administration. And it's just a sign of disrespect not to show the same level of respect the Oval Office that Trump...
Like, first of all, were they even in the Oval Office? That, I don't know how big the Oval Office counts, because I'm pretty sure Elon has been in the Oval Office without wearing a suit all the fucking time. Like, hello? Why do we not care about him? And he's not even at war! Except maybe the war of his own mind, okay? Where he's on fucking ketamine 24/7. Like, what?
clearly thinks it deserves. And he said it, Trump, right away. He's like, oh, thanks for dressing up. Like, Zelensky had to know this. So he's coming in right off the jump. It's like, we're going to butt heads. I'm not going to bend the knee. I'm not going to show respect. I'm not really going to say thank you for billions and billions and billions of dollars that the United States has given us. That would piss me off, too, if I was Trump. And then when you're in the meeting, he's just hard-headed and cutting Trump and Vance off. And again, it's not even whether you agree.
Cutting Trump off? Fucking J.D. Vance would lay into this dude for 4 minutes. So Zelensky would start to respond for 3 seconds. And then all of a sudden, Trump would cut him off. Come on, are you serious?
With Zelensky, because his country's been through hell and back. But it's like, they need the United States. They should show some deference to, or thank you to the American taxpayers. We don't have to continually foot this bill. So, like, the antagonistic tone
Okay, but it's different. Zelensky's wearing the fatigues for a political purpose to begin with. Elon's just lumpy and autistic. Elon is not autistic. Elon does not have autism. He's just a fucking loser. I don't know where this Elon is autistic thing comes from. He's not. He's a fucking loser. Like, look at the way that he interacts with people. Look at the way that he texts people. Look at the actions that he takes. Wait, it's not just autism is when you can't dress yourself? Well, that's so fucking retarded. Unless Elon was actually legitimately, like, show me video footage of him wiling out and beating the shit out of people because he can't control his body. Like, that level of autism. An autistic person knows how to get dressed. And he's the richest man in the world. He could pay somebody to tell him how to dress. If he doesn't want to wear a suit, I don't give a fuck. I'm not on convention like that. That's fine. But don't sit here and act all high and mighty because fucking a dude who's single-handedly leading his country through annihilation, okay, against a nuclear power, one of the superpowers of the world, okay, decides to show up wearing what he feels is an outfit appropriate. That's so stupid.
he takes with it, and even more so, like, I respect or understand Trump not wanting to vilify Putin. The last administration did it every single chance they could get. It got us nowhere. Trump made it very clear. He wants diplomacy. He wants to end the death. He wants to end this war. Zelensky is just, Putin's the devil. Putin's a killer. Putin's this. Putin's that. What good is it for Trump to echo those statements? The past president did it. It got us nowhere. If the United States is going to do what everybody needs and wants to be done, get a peace agreement, a ceasefire that Putin actually respects, maybe Putin will be more likely to respect it, honor it. If you don't have a country and a president who's constantly calling him a killer and genocide and all this stuff, somebody that Putin maybe has some degree of...
Elon literally admitted he has Asperger's on SNL like 4 years ago. That's great. First of all, Asperger's didn't technically exist 4 years ago. It's all on autism spectrum disorder. Secondly, Asperger's is like the lightest form of autism. Autism, being an Aspie, having Asperger's doesn't mean that you don't know what dress is appropriate, right? It's not a severely learning disabled person. It's not somebody with Down... I don't even want to say with Down syndrome, because I'm pretty sure even a person with Down syndrome would know, like, when it's appropriate to dress in certain ways or not. Somebody who doesn't know how to put clothes on or doesn't know what is appropriate to wear at what place, this is like a low-functioning autistic person that needs 24/7 care because they can't walk downstairs without throwing themselves down to their death, okay? Jesus.
...relationship with, and when Trump sits down and tries to broker a deal with Ukraine and Russia, we get a deal done. Like, it does no good if they're just going to both sit there like we've done for the last 4 years or whatever and just crucify Russia and crucify Putin and then turn around and be like, hey, sign this peace agreement. So I get Trump, and he said it. He's like, the other side thinks you're a pretty bad guy. So I think Zelensky, and again, this isn't to take away what the Ukrainian people have gone through and how awful it is to be invaded, but show some deference and some willingness to get a deal together and show some respect for Trump in the office. And this is who the American people elected, rather than coming in trying to be like, it's my way or the highway, which is the vibe I got from Zelensky. Like, you're going to have to move a little bit, a lot of it, and hopefully Putin will move a little bit, a lot of it, and we can get a deal done. But whatever happened with the old administration is done, did not work. And what good is giving hundreds of billions of dollars in aid if we're going to be in the same spot in another 4 years? Like, we're just an endless piggy bank? What does that do to the United States?
Wait, what is this? What is all this? Hello? Did he just recently develop autism? Where did all the... Are these deepfake AI pictures? What's going on here? Is this a tuxedo? What's going... How does he... Really makes you think, huh?
So, I don't necessarily have the answers, but I think Trump and Vance handled this as well as they could. Like, we're not going to just get steamrolled by Zelensky at the expense of getting a deal done. And if that means we have to throw a couple flowers at Putin, so be it.
Oh God, is this going to be an opposite day tweet or?
This on Discord. I hated this, and I posted about this on Discord. I hated this because it's like, yeah, they get this midget to stand next to Trump and act like a little beta male, and then they bitch him around. And JD Vance farms the clip, bullying him. They're like, yeah, what the fuck? Why are we giving you so much money? And then when Netanyahu's there the week prior.
Oh fuck! It's like he's gonna say good things about Zelensky, but it's through the lens of his hatred of Israel. Do we take it?
Everyone is, well, Mr. President, sir, Mr. Netanyahu, pushing in the chair, and they're all tweeting like, yeah, you This is America. We're the boss here. We're not giving you money. Did you forget Zelensky was an actor, literally? He was paid to be on stage. Trump was a reality television pioneer. This is all theater. They agreed beforehand, okay, we're gonna bitch Zelensky around on camera. Oh, just a debate that happened to be live. They set up this. You think Netanyahu would ever let himself get bitched on camera like that? No, because he's in charge of America. They do this to Zelensky to get everybody back on their side, to make us forget that we're giving all our tax dollars away to countries that we don't care about or need. That's the annoying part. It was like, fuck yeah, tell that Zelensky that we're not giving him nothing. Keep the same energy next time Netanyahu's in. God damn.
Good one. It's sad because I like Portnoy in a lot of ways. I just don't know. It's like the Joe Roganification of everything. That like I don't know. Everybody has to have strong opinions on every complex foreign policy issue.
Really thought Elon Musk was doing
I am different and I'm happy being different. I don't want to be the same. But I also do respect, I think I've learned in the process as well, is to just respect where people are at. You know, my sisters did not like where I was at when I started speaking the way that I was speaking.
How many sisters do you have?
I have two sisters and they're my best friends. So one is a year older, one's a year younger. So I grew up, we're like a trio.
So they sandwich you. They sandwich you. They will get you, they sandwich you, huh?
Well, they just didn't really care.
Right.
You know, to me, that's Candace. I've always been different, you know,
Right.
and they didn't know what I was on or what I was thinking. And now, this last election, they voted for Trump, which is crazy. Like, I mean, they were fully on the left, and they just sort of saw it. And so it's just been cool to see that. And they now like my podcast before they didn't even listen to it. But we always had, I grew up obviously not obviously, but my family has a great sense of humor. And that was one of the worst things I hated about BLM is that I've always thought that black people culturally, we're the funniest. We're the funniest. You always want to go listen to Chris Rock, Chris Tucker, and you saw that removal where everything was just taken so seriously. We're so easily offended. And I hated that. I thought the best parts of what the black culture represented to me growing up was removed. And for me, my sisters, they never cared. Like, I'd be like, can you watch my cat? I have to go to a Trump thing. My sister would be like, oh, are you going to another one of your Klansman rallies? Like, yeah, I'll watch your cat, you know.
Didn't she literally... Am I misremembering? I feel like she shit on rap and black music and stuff when she was in my apartment. Am I wrong on this? I feel like I remember that happening, but... Or maybe I'm just... Maybe she was only shitting on particular music.
It's always a joke.
Yeah, and I get it, and I guess for me, because I think about it, and I remember when you showed up, I believe it was in Paris, you were with Kanye West, and you were wearing the White Lives Matter shirt and what have you, and I said, damn, and I was upset, I was actually upset at you, and here's why, Candace, because I looked at it and I said, no, don't give the ammunition, don't give the ammunition, you can sit up...
The second to reply was Lord Dewson. As you read the message from Lord Dewson, you feel anger swell up inside of you. No one dares to speak to you that way. After quickly burning the letter, you order every soldier to march. These messages were not going as well as you would have liked. Am I Trump in this scenario?
This person has more. The moment, oh, look at, I have this pen. And then the moment that this external thought, this person has more. The moment that that thought enters, my happiness is destroyed. The reason that video games no longer become fun is because we get bored while playing them. We can be very, very excited about the future, but the moment that the thought of climate change, the thought of inflation, the thought of a dating crisis enters our mind, we are no longer happy. Today, I want to teach you how to be happy. Now, that may sound insane, because is happiness something that can be taught? Because normally when we think about happiness, we think about a fulfilling life. Oh, yes,
what is the AI doing?
Right. But there's climate change, there's war, there's inflation. We think, oh, happiness is finding the person that you love, right? Oh, if I could just get this person to love me back, then I would be happy. But oftentimes those people succeed in entering a relationship and it doesn't lead to happiness. Divorce rates are 50%, people change, the relationship turned out not to be what you thought it was. And then we think about happiness as goals, like I want to achieve all of these things, and if I achieve all of these things, then I will be happy. But y'all know better than I do, all kinds of crap gets in the way. So how on earth are we supposed to be happy in today's world? Well, it's actually pretty simple. The problem is that we have forgotten or lost what it means to actually be happy. We have lost our technical understanding of what happiness is, right? So if you ask someone, oh, what is happiness to you? First of all, that question is stupid, because happiness to you is irrelevant. There is no happiness to you. It's not like we're asking the question, oh, what is sadness to you? What is pain to you? What is feeling anxious to you? No, like these are common, technical, neuroscientific definitions of the human state of existence. And we have lost our understanding of, first of all, what the definition of happiness is. And since we don't even know what it is, we can't consistently create it. But here's the crazy thing. We actually know exactly what happiness is. That's what I'm going to teach you today. And once we understand what it is, we will understand how to create it. I know this is going to sound nuts, but basically irrespective of the circumstances of your life. Now, if you're listening to this, the first thing that you're going to say is, this is bullshit, right? Like, this is insane. You can't just make a video about learning to be happy or how to be happy and then everyone becomes happy. If it was that so simple, someone would have done it. Well, hear me out and let's pay attention and then we'll see, right? Because I get that. I get how insane it is, but just bear with me. So the first thing that we got to understand is that happiness does not come from objects, right? So this is the biggest mistake we make, and it's a tragedy that this is true, by the way. So we go our whole lives thinking that a particular thing will make me happy, right? So, oh, if I have a burger today, I will be happy. If I can get this person to fall in love with me, I will be happy. I'm a virgin. If I can get laid, I will be happy. If I get promoted, if I make more money, all of these things will bring me happiness. Now, why do we believe this stuff? Because in our experience, it's true. I wanted a burger, I got a burger, and I ate it, and now I'm happy. Dr. K, what the hell are you talking about? This is how it works. Except it doesn't work that way. I know, just hear me out. Because if the burger is where the happiness is, every time you eat a burger, you would be happy, right? And I was addicted to video games. This is the big tragedy, is that the happiness is not in the object. If it was, I wouldn't be here. I would be super happy being a degenerate gamer, playing video games 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's what I'd be doing all the time. But the whole problem is that chasing that object doesn't consistently bring you happiness. And y'all know this, right? Because you can have your favorite show that you want to, oh, I really want to binge watch a show, and then it's just not enjoyable. You really want to play this video game, oh, Path of Exile 2 just came out and everyone's really excited. You load up Path of Exile, like, Or you do finally get that person to go out with you on a date. You do finally get laid. And then it turns out that this is not what you thought it was. So the first thing that we have to understand is that if the happiness is in the object, every time we engage with the object, we would get the same level of happiness, right? Like, that's just how it works. If the weight of this pen is in the pen, when I pick up the pen, I feel the weight. That doesn't change no matter how many times I pick it up, what my mood is, what the weather is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The quality is intrinsic in the object, but that's not how it works for happiness. So how does it work for happiness? So once again, we're going to pay attention to our experiences. So there's this saying that comparison is the thief of joy. And I've been seeing this posted on all of the Instagrams and everything. Oh, comparison is the thief of joy. Don't compare, don't compare, don't compare. So we can learn a lot from this. The problem is that comparison is not the only thief of joy, right? So we can go through our lives not comparing, and there are all kinds of other things that can take away our happiness. And this is really important data, because if we understand the mechanism of how comparison takes away our happiness, we will understand what happiness truly is. So let's say that I get a toy. Okay, I get some present for Christmas and I'm really happy. I'm like, fuck yeah, I got this toy. And then I call my friend who, you know, also got Christmas presents. Like, yeah, I got that same toy and I got this other toy. And now suddenly I was happy, right? I was really happy with the toy. And then this bit of information, tiny bit of information for my friend enters my brain. And then suddenly I was so happy with this. Oh, wow. I'm so happy. And then suddenly this happiness disappears. Like, what the, isn't that weird? Like, think about that for a second, right? Isn't it really strange that you can be perfectly happy with something, then something happens and the happiness is robbed? Oh, I got promoted. Yeah, I'm making $100,000 a year. Oh, your bonus was 100 and you're making 120? Suddenly I'm unhappy. So kind of weird, right? And now let's look at our other example of playing a video game or binge watching a show and not enjoying it. What is it that makes you not enjoy binge watching a show? Why do we even long for things like binge watching shows, playing video games, drugs, sex, even sleep? I work with people who are suicidal and they long for death. What are they longing for with all of these things? They are longing for a peace of mind, right? So I want to get lost in a show. I want to be so engaged with the show that the rest of the world disappears. I want to turn that TV on at 6 o'clock and I want to watch all through the night, fuel myself, and then when dawn comes, I'm going to pass out. It's going to be amazing, dude. I've done LAN parties, guys. I know, we know what we're talking about if you're a LAN party person. You want to obliviate your mind. You want to be lost with drugs. You want to be completely outside of your own head. And that brings us to another point as well, which is that everyone is doing mindfulness now. But mindfulness is a scam. That's not really what it is. The point of mindfulness is not to fill your mind with things. It is actually the exact opposite, to empty your mind. The actual practice is mindlessness, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to empty our mind. And when we enter this empty mind state, we end up being relatively content and happy. People who do mindfulness meditation for about an 8-week period, their quality of life increases. They become objectively happier. So how can we kind of distill all of these examples to understand what the nature of happiness is? So when I'm enjoying, I got a pen for Christmas. Yay, I'm very happy. So at this moment, my mind is focused on this. I am absorbed in this. This is why we love drugs. So if people who, are dancing while they're drunk or getting the munchies while they're high, what is so fun about that? It's that you are completely absorbed within the activity. This is also why orgasm is so much fun, because when you are having an orgasm, you are not thinking about anything else. So the nature of happiness is very simple. The nature of happiness is a one-pointedness of the mind. Anytime we are absorbed within one activity, we are happy. The problem that we fall into is that we become dependent on external objects to create this one-pointedness of the mind for us. Since I don't know how to make my mind one-pointed, I'm going to rely on a video game or drugs or a TV show, and we don't watch boring shows, right? We're going to rely on this object to make our mind one-pointed. The problem is that as we rely on this external object to force one-pointedness of the mind for us, then our mind becomes weak. We are not capable of making our mind one-pointed. Now, there's a really, really interesting term to describe a mind that is not one-pointed, a mind that is fractured in 1,000 directions. And as a psychiatrist, the thing that my patients consistently hate the most, across every patient that I've worked with, the thing that people dislike the most is something called boredom. When people hear about our coaching program, their first response is usually, why would I work with another human being when I can watch YouTube videos all on my own? Working with a coach is right for you. So what is boredom? What happens inside you when you are bored? Your mind is all over the place. You want to do this, you want to do this, you want to do this, you feel restless, you feel like fidgeting, right? There's nothing to occupy the mind. So when we're bored, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but a couple days ago, I was bored. So I loaded up a video game. I played it for 5 minutes and I was like, this is not fun for me. So I closed the video game. I started browsing Reddit for a couple of minutes. Then I closed Reddit and I was like, this is not fun for me. And then I loaded up a second video game, Star Sector and then Path of Exile. And then I played that for 5 minutes and I was like, this is not doing it for me. What human beings hate more than anything else in this world is boredom. Happiness and sadness are not opposites. Happiness and boredom are opposites, because happiness is a one-pointed mind and boredom is a mind that's all over the place. Why is it that we watch TV when we eat something? Because when we eat something, instead of focusing on this, our mind is running all over the place. So instead, what we want is we want an artificial way to focus our mind so that we're not bored when we eat. And now if we look at all of the things that destroy our happiness, we will see that there is one very, very, very simple pattern. I used to be one-pointed, and now an external thought enters and shatters my one-pointedness. I used to be, oh, look at, I have this pen. And then the moment that this external thought, this person has more, the moment that that thought enters, my happiness is destroyed. The reason that video games no longer become fun is because we get bored while playing them. We can be very, very excited about the future, but the moment that the thought of climate change, the thought of inflation, the thought of a dating crisis enters our mind, we are no longer happy. And this is the cool thing about a one-pointed mind. All the things that you think of as making you unhappy will no longer make you unhappy. Really good example is something called work. So I've seen so many posts about people saying, oh, is this just life where we're working from 9 to 5 and then we commute and then that's it? I can't do this for 30 years, right? I can't slog away for 30 years. And then on the flip side, we have this thing called the flow state, which is this mythical creation of this time when people are like, they're working really hard, being really productive, and it feels really good. Like, that sounds completely OP. What's the difference between these two states? When you are grinding 9 to 5 and you don't like your job, what is happening in your mind? Are you absorbed with your work? Of course not. Your mind is wandering. Your work is boring. What is boring is many fluctuations of the mind all at once, right? This is the nature of suffering. My work is so boring, so then I have to distract myself. I can tolerate work if I listen to an audiobook, if I listen to a podcast. Why do we do that? Because when I listen to a podcast, it creates one-pointedness of the mind and makes the work more tolerable. But it's not the podcast itself, it is simply the one-pointedness of the mind that becomes tolerable. And this is true from a clinical perspective as well. If we look at any mental illness, you can, whichever one you want, we're going to go through a bunch of them. What we will see is that all of these mental illnesses share one thing, which is many fluctuations of the mind. When someone is depressed, they're thinking, oh, life is hopeless, there's no point, no one likes me, I'm failing, I'm terrible, I'm a loser. So many thoughts. When we look at something like a panic attack or anxiety, that's even worse. Oh my God, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And then you engage with those thoughts, you feed those thoughts, and you work yourself from anxiety into a panic attack. What is the difference between anxiety and panic attack? The number of thoughts that you're having per second. We can even look at things like obsessive compulsive disorder, which is literally the definition of obsessive compulsive disorder is to have intrusive, obsessional thoughts that will never go away. The reason that we engage in compulsions is to shut off our thoughts. Literally, this is what happens in OCD. People are like, unless I flick the light switch up and down 7 times, I will keep having thoughts of everyone in my life dying in a car accident. So in order to shut off the thoughts, they engage in the behavior. This is the really sad thing. If we look at the world today, we all have a very mild form of OCD. We don't really have OCD. But the analogy still holds, because what are we doing? I have a negative thought. What do? I engage in a compulsive behavior to make it go away. I'm bored. What should I do? Play a video game. Makes the thought of boredom go away. I feel terrible about myself. What should I do? Watch some porn. Makes the thought of feeling terrible about myself go away. So if you want to create happiness in your life, irrespective of your circumstances, and I know this is what's really going to rub people the wrong way, because we all think that the circumstance...
The messages are beginning to arrive later and later. Unfortunately, there is nothing that you can do to speed them up. The other lords must reply in their own time. However, I don't have much faith in there ever being peace. Gloom.
Circumstances create happiness. But we know that's not true. There are plenty of billionaires out there who are still struggling to be happy. And I've worked with homeless people who seem oddly content. You may have met some of these people in your life where you're like, how is this person so happy despite having so little? Or you may look at another person and say, how on earth is this person so unhappy when they have so much? So sure, there's a correlation between the amount of security you have, the amount of money you have, and your happiness. That correlation absolutely exists. But what we're talking about is a technical definition of happiness. What is happiness within you? So now the question becomes, how do we create it? So the first thing that we've got to do is talk about meditation. And I know, meditation is the answer, meditation is the answer, meditation is... No, meditation is not the answer. We're going to talk about it. You decide whether meditation is the answer. Meditation is not going to make you happy, okay? Let's understand how meditation can make you happy if you do it the right way. What does meditation train us to do? Meditation trains us to have a one-pointed mind. That's it. Observe your breath. Keep on observing your breath. But I'm bored. I don't give a fuck. Keep observing your breath. Keep observing your breath. But I'm bored. I'm not doing anything. There's no video games. There's no titties. It's just meditation. I'm bored, right? Meditate on titty. I don't know if that's going to be edited out or not. Whatever. Okay. So what's the purpose of meditation? So if you want a one-pointed mind, meditation is simply the easiest way to practice entering a one-pointed state of mind, right? So this is why meditation is also an evidence-based intervention for anxiety, for depression, for schizophrenia, for OCD. Like, cool how that works, right? It relieves all of these things because it counters the basic problem with those, which is too many thoughts all over the place, really chaotic thoughts. And y'all know what this is like. You know what it's like to have thoughts full of your head and you don't know what to do and you're spiraling and all. It feels terrible. It's so much suffering. Instead, we want peace. We want peace of mind, okay? So meditation is the first thing that will train you to do that if you want to do that. The second thing that we can do, and this one is going to be even a crappier answer than meditation, is learn to tolerate boredom. So this is what I would recommend for y'all. You guys, if the weather is decent, you're not going to like get frostbite or anything. So I think a grounding practice works really well. So go outside, make sure your shoes are off, and hopefully you can step on grass or dirt or something natural. Make sure your head is uncovered and your feet are touching the ground, and spend 30 minutes with your eyes closed outside, focusing on each foot and then the top of your head. So we're going to do this rotating meditation, I guess, of focusing on one foot, focusing on the second foot, focusing on the top of our head. So just rotate your awareness between these three things. Take a deep breath in and feel yourself just pulling in the energy from the ground and the sky, okay? The purpose of this is just to create the tolerance of boredom. So the other thing that we can do to help us be happy is just to learn how to tolerate boredom. So I think this grounding practice is really, really good because it gives us something to occupy the mind, but it's something that on purpose, I'm not giving you something that's going to be very occupying, right? I don't want you to be very occupied. I want you to be bored. You can also, if you've got balls of steel or ovaries of steel, you can also try free balling travel. So this is something that's really dangerous, right? You could try going on a plane or going on a bus or going on a car and like not doing anything. Like don't take anything to do and just free ball it. Just like go for it, like raw dog that stuff, you know, like it's not, just give it a shot. You're like, oh my God, Dr. K, that sounds terrible. But well, think about it. Like, what are you really losing? When you have thousands and thousands and thousands and hours of playing video games and watching shows and stuff like that, what, like 4 hours of not watching something is going to kill you? Yeah, Dr. K, it's going to kill me. Oh my God. So learn to tolerate boredom. The better you are at tolerating boredom, sitting with boredom, letting those thoughts arise and letting them pass, the more happy you will become. And now we get to the third and arguably the hardest thing, and the thing that will actually make everything else that I said completely false, okay? So now I'm going to torpedo my whole argument. So if you really want to be happy, if we look at ourselves when we are in a moment of happiness, the cause of disruption is something called a lingering thought. So you're sitting there, maybe you're at Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, and you're having a good meal, and then a thought creeps in, right? So we already said that one-pointedness of the mind is what creates happiness, fair enough. But if we look at when we try to be happy, we have these persistent, lingering thoughts that will enter our mind. They come from somewhere. And these lingering thoughts are really, really dangerous because there are all kinds of desires that we have that are unfulfilled. There are all kinds of goals that we set for ourselves. There are all kinds of worries that we have about the future. So the last thing to really consider is that you cannot be happy. It's going to be very hard to be happy as long as those lingering thoughts are there. Now, I'm not talking about depression. I'm not talking about comparison. I know it's kind of weird because, like, it's hard for me to define this, but hopefully y'all know what I'm talking about. There are some thoughts in your life that keep coming up about things that you should do. That's what a lingering thought is. It's persistent. It's not a random fluctuation. It is a persistent fluctuation. And it's not something that is necessarily like depressive, right? It's not a thought that makes you feel really, really terrible or really, really anxious. They're thoughts that connect and come from your heart and things that you know you should do. Things that make you feel sad and disappointed, more disappointed with yourself than sad. Right? It's like, I should really do this thing. And the last thing that I'll tell y'all is that in order to make these lingering thoughts go away, you've got two options. You can either become a level 100 yogi, or you can do the fucking thing. And what I want y'all to understand is when we struggle with these thoughts, these lingering thoughts, we struggle with procrastination, I should do this, oh, it's so hard. That's not what I'm talking about. Shouldn't enter the equation. There's a different way to look at this, which is, do you want to have a peaceful mind? If the answer is yes, you will never have it as long as that karma is incomplete. As long as that thought is lingering, it is incomplete. You will never be happy. You can level up to 100 level yogi and then gain complete detachment and be perfectly happy. You can do it that way. That's way harder. What's way easier is actually doing the fucking thing. So when you're quiet, when you're got some moment of happiness, when you're one-pointed and that thought pops up, the way that you need to approach that task is, do I want peace of mind, I know this is going to sound insane, for the rest of my life? If I want peace of mind for the rest of my life, it has to start with this lingering thought. Because if you always wanted to be a painter and you've wanted this for 15 years and it keeps coming up, this will haunt you. It has haunted you for your entire life. So then you must do the thing if you want a mind at peace. Now, you may say, but Dr. K, does this mean I should just do whatever, should I just work really hard and fulfill all my goals? No. I want y'all to understand very clearly what I'm saying. What I'm talking about is the state of happiness and what shatters the state of happiness. I'm not telling you to fulfill your goals so that you have a happy life. I've worked with billionaires who have tried that, doesn't work. The fulfillment of the goal is not what brings you happiness. The fulfillment of the goal makes the lingering thought go away and allows you to be one-pointed for a moment in time. Focus, Dr. K, focus your mind. The one exception could be the insertion of certain body images could bring us happiness. I don't know. Anyway.
So I want to get crystal dragons. Those are the best. Those are OP. I'm wondering whether I can get to the hill fort first and then get it. I might be able to. Like, I would want them this week and next. So yeah. Let's see whether that works out.
Play the clip, I haven't seen it. It's just Trump thanking Roberts for, thanks so much for everything. And then Roberts came out at 9 a.m. this morning. He was like, you know what? Fuck you, actually. Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose. Release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it is over for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies, and you are sick and twisted. I am sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say. I have just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. This is your last warning. For the leadership, now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also, to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. Make a smart decision. Release the hostages now, or there will be hell to pay later. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Strong man. Everybody around the world, by the way, views this as being super duper strong. Super, super, super strong, by the way. Feared everywhere. By the way, he's already said this before, but... this is something we can keep track of. Okay, let's do this. Jesus. Probably sound a little bit this one. Okay, I'm just curious. What is find me every single big tweet on Amy Coney Barrett from a conservative account. Like, what was this tweet? Give me that Jack Posobiec one. When I say big, I mean like, I don't know what counts as big. The thing is, I don't know a lot of these accounts. Like, people say that some of these are real. Like that, that Gunther guy, Eagleman Gunther or whatever, is a real I don't believe it. They all look like Russian trolls to me, but apparently some of these are like real Americans. At least over 50,000 followers. Like 30,000. No,
It's not really the same.
Oh, we already watched this. We can watch it again.
Dana, we are waging a 21st century information warfare campaign against the left, and they are using tactics from the 1990s. They are holding tiny press conferences, tiny little rallies. They're screaming into the ether on MSNBC. This is what you call top-down command and control. You get the talking points from a newspaper, and you put it on the broadcast network, and then it disappears. What you're seeing on the right is asymmetrical. It's like grassroots guerrilla warfare. Someone says something on social media, Musk retweets it, Rogan podcasts it, Fox broadcasts it, and by the time it reaches everybody, millions of people have seen it. It's free money. And we're actually talking about expressing information. They are suppressing information. It's not really the same. Dana, we are waging a 21st...
True. Oh, damn. How many tweets has he done? Sorry, I've noticed MAGA has been using the term duly elected a lot, or like a lot all of a sudden. Is there a reason why? Yes, signaling that the president was elected by the people is basically a reason for him to act like a dictator. That's the goal. When they say that the president is duly elected, he's got the popular vote, he's got a mandate, they're saying that he should be able to act above the law because so many people voted for him. That's what they mean when they say that. Thanks. many followers does this guy have? 16.8k. Fuck you. I don't want these.
Yeah, those turns belong. They're so long. Anyway, wondering whether I should just take all of my army and just have only crystal dragons. Might make sense. Also, let's not have an endless bag of gold on our main. And yeah, this should be okay.
Jesus. Wait, how many of these are there? Sorry, I'll put this. Please talk to Timothy Snyder. I don't know who that is. If they want, they can message me. Why'd you link this Gunther Eagleman tweet? This isn't about...
This will take so long. I need to maybe speed up the map movement. But I can't really understand where the opponent has moved if I speed it up. Oh, the alliance is nice, but I don't want to see everything you're doing. Anyway, now we can get more crystal dragons, maybe. Yep. What else should we want? Do we want to attack these crystal dragons? We will probably defeat them in quite expert fashion. Or get them join us. Maybe next week. Would need angels soon-ish. Right now I don't care. You can just go... I don't know. You can take a bunch of speedy units. And just walk around the map, I guess. I don't care about... Ooh! We should take this. Behemoths.
Jesus.
I don't really care about them. Can just take stuff.
Any more? Over 100k?
Going for Dark Angels soon. Then I'll have Crystal Dragons and Archangels. Ooh. Now I can try to fight using my Crystal Dragons. Someone invaded. That's a
Charlie Kirk, of course.
legitimate army. I think I can just win against this guy.
He doesn't mention it.
Crystal for the win. Yep. Even auto battle is easy.
Should we do multiple tweets?
I think I'll get some more crystal dragons. Let's try to get these. I'm not sure whether we'll get them though.
Wait, is there a difference between cat turd and cat turd 2?
Better get there.
The same cat? Oh, no,
that's a bit better. Let's try to get these. Not sure what this entails. 50k, 15k. I don't think I want to. Even though this might be cool. Immediately gives us some gold back, but still need to buy out those dragons. He can't get here with one turn, can he? Probably not. Just in case, let's get some range units in. think this even might defend it. Ah, my tooth hurts so much. It's not even funny. We'll go to the dentist tomorrow ASAP.
I think I want all of them on same day. I think it hits better, hits harder.
What does this leg give? I don't remember.
Like, who the fuck are these people?
Anyway.
Insurrection Barbie. I've never heard of this person in my life. They have
Insurrection
1 million
Barbie.
followers on Twitter.
Ooh, logistics, finally.
Are these, I don't believe that most of these are real people.
Let's get one more Crystal Dragon, and then let's try to get these join via Diplo or otherwise. This guy's just exploring, I guess. 15k, maybe we should do that. Still need to explore upstairs too, though. Yeah, we'll buy angels instead and the crystal dragons. I really like the design of crystal dragons. They're not the best. They can take spell damage, etc. But like, they look pretty cool. Like the sharp corners. Not even taking my gold mine. It's just like coming around here and waiting for me to perish, I guess. What's missing? Crystals. Okay, makes sense. Guess I can trade. I could also just like run there, get some army with her. Yeah. I don't actually think we need the angels right away. We're gonna win this fight without those angels. Pretty easy even. This should be easy. Would consider getting this first. No. Look at us, 3 of them. Can I slow them? 12. Okay.
Who are these people? Wife and mom. They always have profiles like this. Married woman, proud dad. Sometimes it's like running for a local district. MAGA, Trump 2020. I don't believe any of these people are real. I think these are all fucking bots. I don't believe any of these.
600 left. Ah, this kind of sucks. Probably cannot do this.
Is this a real guy? Former chief counsel for
No, it failed. What?
There's a title at least.
Yeah, the power stack survives, and this doesn't. Kind of makes sense. Need to defend with that one. Probably need to defend with both. Let's wait with this one. And let's do this.
Okay, no more. I don't have time for this. Jesus.
Okay, we're running out of health, but we got the meteor showers in. It should be our victory now.
Bubble Bath Girl. Name is Paul A. Sispula. Profile says Save America Now. Okay.
Yeah, this is a win. And we win. Cool. Goes to show, auto battle is shit. Okay, but still hesitant about this fight. I'll win for sure if he does attack, but I want to win more.
What Russia doesn't want you to know about
Throughout
your
Russia's
history.
years-long invasion of
Here,
Ukraine,
watch this.
a central justification made by the Russian side in the war for having invaded Ukraine in the first place has been the expansion of the NATO military alliance right up towards Russia's borders over the years since the end of the Cold War. The Kremlin currently insists that in 1990, just before the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, NATO and Western officials allegedly made assurances to Moscow that NATO would never
20k and
expand a
10
single
crystal.
inch forward to the east in the new world that was emerging in Europe. But over the years that followed, the Kremlin argues that NATO then betrayed Russia and went back on their word by admitting Poland, Czechia, and Hungary into the alliance in 1999,
Cool.
followed by Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovakia, Romania, and Bulgaria in
3
2004.
crystal
And their
dragons.
subsequent guarantees towards both Georgia and
quite
Ukraine
nice.
towards future membership in the alliance that was extended in 2008, which, in the Kremlin's argument, finally crossed Russia's red lines and supposedly forced them into acting militarily in order to avoid becoming encircled by NATO. This argument made by the Kremlin that the West supposedly betrayed them and broke their promises made in the early 1990s has become the foundation
Yeah, we'll get this
for Russia's
and
justification behind their brutal ongoing invasion of Ukraine. And the Russian government uses that argument to shift the blame for the unimaginable horrors that they're inflicting upon Ukraine onto the Western world instead. And in this video, I want to take the time to explain why NATO actually enlarged towards Russia's borders in the aftermath of the Cold War. Why Russia's current arguments blaming the war on NATO's expansion don't hold
forgot.
as much water as you might
Damn it,
think.
I need
And I
to
want to explain
trade
all
with a
this primarily
shitty...
from the perspective of the countries of Central and Eastern Europe.
Actually, can I maybe defend without a hero, you know?
Voluntarily of their own
I think I
accord
can.
for their own strategic reasons in the later 1990s and the early 2000s.
Should be even rather easy.
Back in November of 1989,
Let's try.
the Berlin Wall had just collapsed in Germany, and the prospect of Germany reunifying again between East and West for the first time in 45 years had suddenly become a real and unexpected geopolitical
shit, it
possibility.
smells.
In the weeks and months that followed, intense negotiations began between the United States, the Soviet Union, the European states, and the two Germanys on what German reunification might end up looking like. There were, in theory, only two practical possibilities that could be foreseen at the time. East Germany would either be absorbed into West Germany, and by extension, East Germany's territory would be subsumed into the NATO alliance that West Germany was already a part of. Or, East Germany would be absorbed into West Germany, and the new unified Germany would become a neutral state
Just
neither in
to
NATO nor in the Warsaw Pact
get those
in the
spell
center
points
of
slower.
Europe. The neutral option, however, was sharply rejected by European states like France and the UK, who feared what a united and powerful Germany outside of NATO and the core of Europe would mean for the future. In light of Germany's
Yeah, we'll just
military
flee.
past,
Not enough
they
gold,
argued
whatever.
at the time that in order to keep Germany democratic and invested in European unity and stability, all of Germany needed to be fully incorporated into European institutions like NATO and could not be left neutral on their own. And so, the US ultimately agreed with that viewpoint and pressed on with negotiations with the Soviets to accept NATO enlargement to encompass East Germany's territory after the reunification process was completed. Only 3 months after the Berlin Wall had collapsed in February of 1990, then U.S. Secretary of State James A. Baker and his West German counterpart, Hans-Dietrich Genscher, met with the Soviet Union's leader Mikhail Gorbachev to discuss what the status of a reunified Germany would look like in the future. During that meeting, archival evidence
that
suggests
guy
Baker
opened up
offered a
the
verbal
gates.
assurance to Gorbachev that in the event of the United States maintaining its military presence,
Ah,
in a
that was
future
my
reunified
ally.
Germany within the framework
I was
of
fearing him
NATO,
without
there would
any
be no
reason to. Just,
extension of NATO's jurisdiction or
whatever.
military presence by a single inch in the eastern direction. End quote. To some, this statement could be interpreted as Baker promising that NATO would not expand eastwards from West Germany to encompass the territory of East Germany, or potentially any other area in Europe as well. And a few months later, in May of 1990, the then Secretary General of NATO, Manfred Wagner, echoed similar assurances regarding eastward NATO enlargement verbally during a speech in Brussels. Similar verbal assurances were made by other high-ranking U.S. and Western officials to Soviet leaders during this early period of negotiations. But at around the same time, the U.S. National Security Council also suggested that the idea of keeping the former East Germany out of NATO within the context of a unified Germany was going to be an unworkable idea in practice. And so they quickly clarified that Baker's comments only meant that NATO troops themselves wouldn't be deployed any further east into the former East Germany from their current positions in West Germany after reunification, while territorially, East Germany would be fully within the legal coverage of the alliance. None of these verbal assurances were ever formally written down on paper into a treaty, and as the negotiations continued to evolve and moved on through the rest of the year in 1990, those early verbal assurances and ideas were steadily dropped with time. Months later, in September of 1990, the negotiations finally culminated with a treaty on the final settlement with
This
respect
guy,
to
though,
Germany,
might be a problem.
signed, and which recognized that Eastern Germany would be fully incorporated into West Germany, including its membership.
Let's just wait for now.
While NATO agreed that they wouldn't construct any permanent military bases in the former East Germany or station any nuclear weapons there. Nothing in that treaty was ever mentioned about the prospect of NATO membership being expanded anywhere else in Europe, or what that might even look like. Largely because at the time it was signed in September of 1990, the idea of NATO membership expanding to any other country further east than Germany was rather inconceivable because they were all still members of the Soviet
allies under attack? No.
And many of them still had tens of thousands of Soviet troops deployed to their territories, like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary. Nobody at that time on either side of the negotiations could have known that within just over a year's time in the future, the Warsaw Pact would dissolve and then the Soviet Union itself would catastrophically collapse. And so, at the time in 1990, no written guarantees were ever made on the potential enlargement of NATO into any of these other states. And it's questionable if any serious discussions about that possibility were even made through 1990. So, in October of 1990, Germany reunified. NATO was extended to cover the former East Germany's territory, but without the presence of any NATO troops deployed there, and the Soviet Union's internal collapse began rapidly accelerating in often violent fashion. All three of the Baltic states had unilaterally declared their independence from the Soviet Union in 1990, but they initially went largely unrecognized, and even Mikhail Gorbachev was unwilling to accept their loss. Soviet troops were deployed into Lithuania in January of 1991 to try and restore the Kremlin's authority there, which led to a violent confrontation that saw 14 Lithuanian civilians killed by the Soviet soldiers and more than 700 others injured before the Soviets decided to withdraw. While around the same time, Soviet troops in neighboring Latvia attacked the Latvian Ministry of the Interior in the capital of Riga, that also ultimately resulted in the tragic deaths of 6 Latvians as well, all of which turbocharged the support of the Baltic states for their independence from Moscow even further. The Warsaw Pact alliance was finally dissolved between February
Getting near my main hero,
1991,
that's
and
a mistake.
Thousands of Soviet soldiers deployed in Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary began their process of withdrawal, which in the case of Poland was not completed for 2 more years until 1993. By early August of 1991, with the Warsaw Pact dissolved and Germany reunified, the Soviet republics of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Georgia, and Armenia had all already declared their independence, while Gorbachev attempted to salvage what was left of the Soviet Union with a new treaty that would have converted the country into a less centralized federal system. All of the remaining 9 Soviet republics who had not already declared their independence approved of the new treaty, except for Ukraine, who was very hesitant about it, and then a group of Communist Party hardliners launched a coup d'etat the day before the treaty was supposed to be signed in order to prevent it from going into force and to restore the Kremlin's authority over all of the republics. The coup collapsed after only 2 days, but it was still enough to convince Ukraine that Moscow couldn't be trusted, and so Ukraine declared its own independence just a couple of days later after the coup had ended. And with that, the Soviet Union was effectively doomed, and the entire country would be dissolved altogether within only a few more months by December of 1991. At this moment, at the very end of 1991, the Russian Empire, in both its Tsarist and communist varieties, had collapsed twice during the 20th century, and all of the nervous, freshly independent states of Central and Eastern Europe at the end of 1991 looked back to the precedent of what had happened historically the last time the Tsarist version of the Russian Empire had collapsed in 1917. When that happened, for a brief moment in time, the chaos of the empire's collapse also resulted in a brief window of opportunity for the smaller nations, who had been occupied by the Russians for centuries, to secure their independence before the Russians could regain their strength again and take them back. Within a year of the imperial collapse by 1918, Russia was enveloped within a civil war, while Poland, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan,
So
and the Muslim
we can
League
do
of the
this,
North
right?
Caucasus, including
No.
Chechnya, had all declared their independence from Russia. But after the Bolsheviks began emerging victorious in the Russian Civil War, the Soviet Russians invaded and reconquered Chechnya, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, and Belarus all by 1922, when they proclaimed the creation of the Soviet Union. But they had also attempted to conquer the Baltic states and Poland during this early period as well. By August of 1920, the Soviet Russians had invaded and successfully occupied about half of Poland and were at the gates of Warsaw itself, with victory appearing imminent. But then, they were unexpectedly and decisively defeated by the Poles at Warsaw. The whole tide of the war changed after that, and the Poles managed to push the Russians further back until a peace treaty was signed between them in 1921 that established Poland's inter-war borders and which also secured Poland's independence from Russia for the first time in the past 126 years, since the Polish state was extinguished by the Russians all the way back in 1795. And in their fight for independence against the Russians between 1919 and 1921, around 50,000 Poles paid for it with their lives. And unfortunately for Poland, it would only be the first war they would fight against Russia for their independence during the 20th century, and they would ultimately lose the Second War. Only 18 years after Poland and the Soviet Union ended their First War, the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany agreed on the infamous Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in August of 1939 that divided Eastern Europe between their own spheres of influence. Within weeks of the pact being signed, Germany invaded Poland from the west, and shortly after, the Soviet Union invaded Poland once again from the east. The Soviets then annexed the eastern territories of Poland they conquered into the Soviet republics of Belarus and
What else can the U.S. do to force Zelensky's hand now that the Trump administration is giving U.S. intel to Ukraine? Is there really anything else to take away? I don't know.
Ukraine, which remained to this day. A few months later, in November of 1939, the Soviets launched another all-out invasion into Finland, with the initial goal of conquering the entire country and absorbing it back into the red version of the Russian Empire. But after they suffered enormous casualties in Finland and failed to make significant advances, they settled with forcing Finland into ceding about 10% of their territory over to Russia instead, which also remains Russian to this day, and nearly 26,000 Finns were killed during the invasion. And then, a few months after their invasions of Finland and Poland, the Soviets invaded and conquered all three of the Baltic states over the summer of 1940, and forcefully annexed them directly as constituent republics into the Soviet Union. And they also threatened Romania with a further invasion unless they agreed to surrender over the territory of Bessarabia, which the Romanians only agreed to do under the immense threat of war if they did not, which then essentially became the Soviet Republic of Moldova. All of these Soviet invasions between 1939 and 1940 were launched into former territories of the Tsarist Russian Empire, who had achieved and secured their independence over the previous 20 22 years since the collapse of 1917. Then, after Nazi Germany betrayed the Soviet Union and invaded them in 1941, the Soviets eventually managed to defeat them and push them all the way back to Berlin by 1945. And in the process, the Soviet Red Army found its troops in control over most of Eastern Europe. In the aftermath of the Second World War, the Soviet Union re-annexed Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania against their wills, annexed the former German territory of Königsberg that they renamed to Kaliningrad, and forcefully imposed puppet communist regimes loyal to the Kremlin in the states their army came to occupy, from Bulgaria to Romania to Hungary to Czechoslovakia to Poland and to East Germany, which eventually became the members of the Soviet-led Warsaw Pact. And when some of these states attempted to resist their occupation by the Soviet Russian Empire, they were met with extreme violence. In 1956, when the Hungarians rose up in a mass revolution against their Soviet-installed puppet government, the Soviet army that was deployed to Hungary responded with an overwhelming crackdown that killed as many as 3,000 Hungarians and resulted in almost 250,000 Hungarians fleeing the country as exiles. Then, a little more than a decade later, in 1968, when the government of Czechoslovakia attempted to liberalize and moderate its harsh Soviet-imposed communist regime, the Soviet Union led the Warsaw Pact into an all-out massive invasion of the country, with 500,000 soldiers to crush the reforms that killed 137 people in the country and seriously injured another 500 or so others. All of this historical context of how Russia reacted after the first collapse of its empire in 1917, with all of its subsequent attempts to forcibly reconquer the territories it felt it had lost, heavily influenced the deep suspicions of the states of Central and Eastern Europe who emerged independent again after the second collapse in 1991. They almost all universally feared that, given enough time, Russia would one day regain its strength, its power, and its confidence, and come for them again, just like they did after the first collapse in 1917. Especially in light of the fact that the Russian armed forces didn't even complete their withdrawal from Poland until 1993, and they didn't complete their withdrawal from the Baltic states until 1994. Many of them quickly came to see that their biggest guarantee of security from a revisionist Russia in the future that they didn't have between 1917 and 1940 would be by acquiring their membership in NATO, and through it, the extremely valuable Article 5 security guarantee that asserts that an armed attack on one NATO member state is an armed attack against all of them, including the post-Cold War sole remaining global superpower, the United States. And then, Russia almost immediately started doing things in the 1990s that appeared to confirm the suspicions of the Central and Eastern Europeans that Russia was going to attempt and rebuild its lost empire again, just like they did after 1917. And that meant that they were all in a race against the clock to get themselves into NATO before Russia could get to them. Already as early as 1992, merely months after the Soviet Union collapsed, the newly independent Russia under President Boris Yeltsin intervened in Moldova militarily, a former Soviet republic, in order to support a pro-Russian secessionist movement there in the region of Transnistria. The Russian-supported war in Transnistria against the Moldovan government in 1992 killed hundreds of people and resulted in about 12% of Moldova's internationally recognized territory coming effectively under Russian military occupation, where roughly 2,000 Russian soldiers have been permanently deployed to ever since, straight up into the present day. And Moldova was far from the only recently independent country that the Russians intervened in and helped to dismember in the 1990s. At around the same time that the Russian army intervened in Moldova in 1992, Tajikistan, another former Soviet republic, descended into a civil war that saw thousands of Russian soldiers enter into the conflict on the side of the pro-Russian Tajik government in order to crush the rebellion. By 1997, the pro-Russian government in Tajikistan had been stabilized by the Russian intervention, and anywhere between 20,000 and 150,000 people were killed in the country during the war, while as much as 20% of the entire population of Tajikistan had been internally displaced by the fighting. And then, there were also the events in Georgia of the early 1990s too. In 1992, ethnic Ossetian separatist forces had revolted against the Georgian government in the territory of South Ossetia. And while fighting between them and the Georgian government was ongoing over the summer of 1992, the chairman of the Russian parliament at the time, Ruslan Khasbulatov, publicly accused the Georgians of allegedly committing genocide against the Ossetians and threatened that Russia would forcibly annex South Ossetia unless Georgia immediately agreed to a ceasefire that allowed Russian peacekeepers to enter into the territory. Russia mobilized troops along the border, and armed skirmishes between the Russian and Georgian armies were reported as the countries appeared to be on the brink of war, before Georgia finally caved into the pressure and agreed on a ceasefire that left most of South Ossetia under the de facto control of the separatists. And if that wasn't enough, Russia decided to intervene in another rebellion in Georgia in the region of Abkhazia too. In August of 1992, just a couple months after the ceasefire in South Ossetia was made, another ethnic conflict broke out in the Georgian region of Abkhazia between the ethnic Abkhaz minority and the ethnic Georgian majority there. The war in Abkhazia turned into a particularly brutal affair that saw the deaths of tens of thousands of people. And although Russia took an officially neutral position on the war, in practice it came to much more heavily support the Abkhaz side of the war after the Georgians shot down a couple Russian military helicopters. In early 1993, using unmarked aircraft in order to maintain plausible deniability, the Russian Air Force bombed the Georgian-held city of Sukhumi in Abkhazia, while hundreds of unmarked regular Russian troops were covertly deployed to the territory to fight alongside of the Abkhazians. And they even directly engaged the Georgian armed forces in a battle near the village of Tamishi that resulted in hundreds of killed and wounded on both sides. The covert Russian intervention on the side of the Abkhaz separatists in early 1993 decisively shifted the course of the war, and in their victory, the Russian-backed Abkhaz separatists engaged in a wide-scale campaign of reprisals, massacres, and ethnic cleansing of the territory's remaining Georgian population. More than 5,000 Georgian civilians were massacred by the Abkhaz forces, and around 250,000 Georgians were forcibly expelled out of Abkhazia into the rest of Georgia, which was later formally recognized as an act of ethnic cleansing by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Within only 2 years of the Soviet Union collapsing, post-Soviet Russia directly intervened in 4 wars in the post-Soviet world and helped to dismember the freshly independent states of Moldova and Georgia, which obviously alarmed the other freshly independent post-Soviet and post-Warsaw Pact states. And then, alarming them even further, the president of Russia at the time in 1993, Boris Yeltsin, launched a violent self-coup in order to keep himself in power and to expand the powers of the Russian presidency even further. In September of 1993, the Russian parliament voted to impeach Yeltsin and proclaimed his vice president to be the new acting president. And then they all barricaded themselves within the Russian White House in Moscow. Yeltsin, however, refused to stand down, and for the next several days, intense fighting in the streets of Moscow took place between the supporters of Yeltsin and the supporters of the parliament, while the Russian army remained neutral at first. But on the 4th of October in 1993, the Russian army finally decided to side with Yeltsin, and then, on his direct orders, Russian tanks bombarded the White House where the parliament was still barricaded inside, before the building was stormed by special forces units who arrested all of the parliament's leaders. The whole incident represented the deadliest single event of street fighting in the history of Moscow since the October Revolution. A total of 147 people were killed and hundreds of others were wounded in the violence, while Yeltsin's use of the army to crush the parliament who had voted to impeach him enabled him to greatly consolidate power and to strengthen the office of the presidency. It was this moment that especially alarmed the freshly independent states of Central and Eastern Europe, because, in a sense, it symbolized the early death of any hope of democracy taking off in post-Soviet Russia, and it laid the foundations for the long legacy of autocracy to return back to Russia again, following the Soviet and the Tsarist periods. And it would not be long after that before Russia would undertake the first all-out reconquest of a lost piece of their empire in Chechnya. During the collapse of the Soviet Union, the 15 separate republics that made up the Soviet Union all declared their independence from the Soviet Union. But several territories within many of those republics also tried to declare their independence from the republics. One of the most notable examples of this was Chechnya in the North Caucasus, which was administratively an autonomous republic within the Russian Soviet Republic during the Soviet era. But Chechnya was, and is, very demographically distinct from the rest of Russia. In 1991, as the Soviet Union was collapsing, 96% of Chechnya's population were ethnic Chechens who were overwhelmingly Muslim, while only 1.6% of the territory's population were ethnic Russians. There was also still a significant degree of resentment among the Chechen population over the mass deportation of the entire Chechen population to Central Asia that had been ordered by Stalin during the Second World War, in which around 500,000 Chechens were forcibly deported, and as many as 200,000 of them died, or about 1/3 of their total population. In 2004, the European Parliament would classify the event as an act of genocide perpetrated by the Soviet state against the Chechens, and the Chechen survivors were not allowed to return back to their native homeland until 1957, which steadily led to the Chechens demographically recovering and becoming a majority of the population in Chechnya again by 1991. With this history of resentment and mistrust in mind, Chechnya unilaterally declared its independence from Russia in November of 1991, just a month before the Soviet Union was formally dissolved. 3 years of instability within Chechnya followed as various warlords and factions rose up and began fighting one another, while Russia made several limited but unsuccessful attempts to re-establish its control. Chechnya remained a de facto independent state, but went unrecognized as such by any country in the world other than the Taliban-ruled Afghanistan. By the end of November in 1994, A bit over a year after Yeltsin attacked the Russian parliament and consolidated power, Yeltsin delivered an ultimatum to the Chechen government that demanded everyone in the territory lay down their arms and surrender to Russia, or else. The Chechens chose or else, and Yeltsin ordered the Russian armed forces to launch a full-scale invasion. The Russians initially thought that the invasion of Chechnya would be a swift victory, but instead it turned into a brutal quagmire as the Chechens resisted far more heavily than initially expected. Thousands of Russian soldiers were killed, and frustrated, the Russians shifted their tactics to just obliterating Chechnya cities and villages block by block, with overwhelming artillery fire and airstrikes to crush the territory's resistance, with little regard for civilian casualties. This strategy is estimated to have killed around 27,000 Chechen civilians in the capital city of Grozny within just the first 5 weeks after they started, which represented the deaths of roughly 6% of Grozny's pre-war population. Then, in April of 1995, a group of Russian soldiers...
Have you watched the election discrepancy videos? No, I've not watched any of these. I don't care. If more information comes out, that's fine, but I'm not going to go chase down this rabbit hole. I don't know if you're the same guy that keeps emailing me, or if it's like 2 or 3 of you. Please stop spamming with these videos, okay? Jesus.
Into the Chechen village of Samashki, where, reportedly drunk and high on drugs, they proceeded to massacre as many as 300 of the village's civilian inhabitants, which was condemned by international humanitarian aid agencies from around the world at the time. The Russians also utilized filtration camps in Chechnya where they detained around 200,000 Chechens throughout the course of the war, adding to the indiscriminate methods that the Russian military dished out to the territory's civilians. By the summer of 1996, Chechnya was absolutely devastated by the invasion. It's been since estimated by several different sources that around 100,000 Chechen civilians were killed in the conflict, largely by Russia's indiscriminate bombardments of Chechen cities and villages, representing around 10% of Chechnya's entire pre-invasion population being killed, while 500,000 more Chechens had been displaced, and tens of thousands of Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded as well. In their attempt to crush Chechnya and reincorporate it back into Russia, Russia undertook the heaviest and largest-scale bombing campaign seen in Europe since the end of the Second World War, and they arguably partook in another genocide of the Chechen people as well. In 1996, the ruins of Chechnya's capital city, Grozny, looked like colored photographs of Berlin or Dresden or other cities ruined by World War II. The two sides eventually agreed on a ceasefire in 1996.
Did Tim Pool make an Amy tweet? Find me if he did.
Completely ruined and crippled. And only a few years later, in 1999, under a new president, Russia would eventually return and finish the job it started in Chechnya. The First Chechen War, as it would later come to be called, was an early and horrifying precursor to the actions that Russia would later take in Syria and ultimately in Ukraine. And as Russia's annihilation of Chechnya was ongoing between 1994 and 1996, the other freshly independent nations of Central and Eastern Europe, who Russia had also used to dominate, grew even more nervous that the fate of Chechnya could in time become their own fates as well if they failed to protect themselves and deter Russia from ever trying. And they all steadily came to see that getting accepted into the NATO alliance and acquiring protection through NATO's Mutual Defense Clause was going to be all of their best methods for doing that. At the time, however, there was a substantial amount of debate within NATO and within the United States on the wisdom of extending NATO membership any deeper into Europe. There were some Western foreign policy experts in the 1990s who argued that NATO enlargement was unnecessary, and that it would be unwise to extend America's ironclad security guarantees eastward into Europe to nations who were not seen as core strategic interests of Washington. And of course, there was also the fear in the West that enlarging NATO further through Europe across former Warsaw Pact and Soviet states would enrage Russia, and could potentially lead to the Russians fighting in order to prevent it. But in light of Russia's massive invasion and obliteration of Chechnya, its interventions into Georgia and Moldova, and the horrific wars that were also going on in the former Yugoslavia at the time in Croatia and Bosnia, that had collectively resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people in Europe, NATO conducted a study in 1995 on the merits of further enlarging the alliance during this era of instability, and it essentially concluded that European security, stability, and democracy could all be strengthened by extending NATO membership to more countries on the continent. A couple years later, by 1997, NATO would formally extend an invitation to join the alliance to the first 3 countries of Central and Eastern Europe: Poland, Czechia, and Hungary. But these 3 nations didn't simply join the alliance just because they asked to join it. Poland, in particular, with its long history of being invaded and occupied by Russia, and watching on nervously at the events that were unfolding in Chechnya, Moldova, and Georgia, and knowing about the internal debates going on within NATO concerning the wisdom of expanding, was so eager to join NATO and to secure its mutual defense protection that Poland effectively blackmailed its way into NATO instead. Polish government officials as early as 1995 began implying to the Clinton administration that if Poland were not invited to join NATO, Poland would seek out its security through alternative means, like by acquiring their own independent nuclear weapons arsenal instead. And then, to add on even more pressure, during the 1996 U.S. presidential election season, the former president of Poland and the country's first democratically elected leader following the end of communism, Lech Walesa, personally visited Washington, D.C. and started meeting with Clinton's political opposition, the Republicans. At the time, the Republicans were more heavily backing the support of the NATO Enlargement Facilitation Act in Congress against Clinton, which called for America's direct support in getting the new democracies of Central and Eastern Europe into NATO as quickly as possible. At the time, Lech Walesa was widely viewed as a Polish hero who led Poland out of its occupation by the Soviet Union, and so his influence among the Polish-American community in the United States was considered substantial. This was important because Polish Americans made up very large percentages of the population in critical electoral swing states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And so even the implied threat of Lech Walesa campaigning for the Republicans in these swing states was enough to add even further pressure on the Clinton administration to begin lending its support for Poland's entry into NATO. All of this finally culminated in the U.S. Congress and Clinton passing the NATO Enlargement Facilitation Act in 1996. NATO formally extending an invitation to join the alliance to Poland, Czechia, and Hungary in 1997, and their formal entries into the alliance 2 years later at the end of the decade in 1999. They joined NATO only 31 years after the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact had invaded Czechoslovakia, and they marked the first of the former Warsaw Pact states to be admitted into NATO since East Germany unified with West Germany. They also joined NATO in the same year that Vladimir Putin first became Russia's prime minister, theoretically second in power in the country only behind the president, which was still nominally held at the time by Boris Yeltsin. And almost immediately as Putin rose to power as the country's prime minister, he led the Russian armed forces into a second all-out invasion of Chechnya that was much more successful than their first attempt. The Chechen capital, Grozny, already devastated from the fighting of the first invasion attempt that had ended only 3 years previously, was subjected to 2 months straight of overwhelming aerial and artillery bombardment that almost completely leveled what little of it remained, before 100,000 Russian ground troops stormed into the territory to secure the ruins and mop up resistance. Once again, tens of thousands of people in Chechnya were killed, while Grozny itself was so badly damaged in the process that the United Nations labeled it in 2003 as the most heavily destroyed city on the planet. But in the aftermath, Chechnya was fully reconquered by the Russian army and reabsorbed back into Russia. The Russians installed an almost totalitarian puppet regime into power to govern the territory that remains in charge there today, and Putin's popularity in Russia skyrocketed, enabling him to consolidate power next and to secure the country's presidency by 2000. And it was shortly after that, in 2004, when NATO would add its next 7 countries in Central and Eastern Europe, all of whom had their separate historical, geographic, and political reasons to fear an attack from Russia or another aggressor in Europe in the future. Slovenia had just been invaded by the Serb-led Yugoslav army as recently as 1991. Slovakia, like Czechia, had been invaded by the Soviet army as recently as 1968, while occupying Soviet troops hadn't left their country until 1991. Romania and Bulgaria each had dictatorial communist regimes imposed upon them, while Romania had territory taken from them by the Soviets during the Second World War. And then, of course, the 3 Baltic states had all been invaded and directly conquered by the Soviets and were subjected to decades worth of population transfers and Russification policies that had left behind more than 800,000 ethnic Russians across their countries following the Soviet collapse, whose supposed protection they feared Russia might one day use as a pretext for another invasion and conquest in the future. NATO didn't move east in the post-Cold War era so much as the freshly independent states of Central and Eastern Europe quickly moved west, and to prove it, NATO never deployed any foreign permanent military bases to any of those Eastern and Central European states who joined the alliance until after Russia invaded Ukraine and seized Crimea in 2014. And by now, almost a couple decades later after they joined in 2004, following Russia's full-scale invasion of Georgia in 2008, its massive military intervention in Syria, and their massive invasions of Ukraine since 2014 that have killed hundreds of thousands of people, do you think any of them regret their decision to have done so and joined NATO? In Ukraine in particular, Russia's ongoing all-out invasion of the country since 2022 has resulted in by far the deadliest conflict in Europe since the Second World War, that has even exceeded the devastation that the Russian armed forces brought upon Chechnya during the 1990s. Its invasion encouraged Finland and Sweden to apply to and join NATO next. And over nearly 3 years of war, the conflict has likely caused more than 1 million human casualties, making it among the deadliest conflicts anywhere in the entire 21st century. Over the past year in particular, the Russian armed forces have made bloody but consistent gains across the east of Ukraine, to the point where the Russian armed forces have conquered roughly 2,700 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory since the start of 2024, representing a total area roughly the size of Luxembourg, and which also represents roughly 6 times as much territory they have conquered from Ukraine as they did in the previous year across 2023. 2024 was a very, very difficult year for Ukraine, and as their casualties mount, they are steadily losing more ground, while countries on the other side of Ukraine and NATO, especially Poland,
Make sure to check out Banned
are
from Twitch.
growing
Cool.
more and more anxious and nervous about what is going to happen in the future.
Epic.
And the current higher pace of Russia's territorial gains in Ukraine through 2024 began with Russia's capture of the city of Avdiivka in February, that followed an enormous battle for the city's control. Just as the Russians did at Grozny in the 1990s, the Russian armed forces first tried to simply storm into Avdiivka and take it. And after that failed with catastrophic casualties, they resorted to effectively obliterating Avdiivka with overwhelming artillery fire and airstrikes, before they slowly encircled it and advanced forward to mop up the remaining resistance. The Ukrainians had transformed Avdiivka into a veritable urban fortress, and the ferocious battle for the city's control between October of 2023 and February of 2024 not only left the city itself in ruins, but it represented some of the fiercest urban street fighting seen in Europe since the Second World War, and it resulted in more Russian casualties alone than during the entire Soviet invasion of Afghanistan throughout all of the 1980s. And though it was costly for Russia, their capture of Avdiivka ultimately opened up the path for their forces to continue advancing through the rest of the year, further westwards across the Donetsk province towards the next strategically important city, Pokrovsk, where Russian forces are currently beginning to approach. But unfortunately, due to the inherently violent, controversial, and recent nature of discussing one of the biggest battles fought in modern Europe that claimed the lives of tens of thousands of real human beings on both of the sides who were condemned to fighting it, the next part of this video that would cover it would almost certainly cause the rest of the video before it to become demonetized and age restricted, which ultimately would mean that YouTube's algorithm would have never promoted any of this video to you, and you probably never would have seen any of it. But thankfully, I was still able to produce the next part of this video anyway because of the power of Nebula, where you can go and watch the next part covering how the battle for Avdiivka went, and what its implications have been for the Ukrainian battlefield specifically, and for European security more broadly. And this is also just one of more than several dozen exclusive full-length real-life horror videos that you can only find on Nebula in my overall modern conflict series there, which can all only be found over there because of all of their darker, more controversial subject material. That means that there's a bunch of other previous episodes you can also go and watch right now that were very relevant to this video, like this episode going into depth on the wars in Chechnya during the 1990s, this episode covering Russia's invasion of Georgia in 2008, this episode covering Russia's intervention in Moldova in 1992. This episode covering Russia's intervention in the Syrian civil war. Or all of these episodes covering the whole course of Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine and all of the backstory that led up to it, with brand new episodes releasing over there every single month. And even better, I also recently started another completely new monthly series on Nebula called War Room, which will track all of the latest breaking geopolitical news developing from conflicts from all around the world and break them down into a single, easily digestible monthly video briefing series that'll help you stay even more up to date and informed on what's currently happening around the world and why. The latest episode in War Room covering all of the breaking geopolitical news and developments from last month in November, including the recent developments in Syria, is live on Nebula for you to also go and watch right now. And what's even more, you also get access to all of the other amazing exclusive content that's on Nebula, because the best part about this site is that it's jointly co-owned by all of its creators, built by myself and hundreds of other independent YouTubers and podcasters. And because it's a subscription-based service, we all get to work on way bigger and higher budget productions over there than we could ever afford to do on YouTube. That's why there's tons of other exclusive content that you'll find equally fascinating from all of these other creators over there you probably also already know as well.
Why
And
can't I
best
copy
of
this? What the
all,
fuck?
if you sign up by clicking the button that's here on your screen right now or by following the link that's down below in the description, you'll receive an insane 40% discount off of an annual subscription, which means it'll only cost you $3 a month or $36 a year for all of this awesome exclusive content from myself and hundreds of other independent creators, with even more stuff getting added every single month. And if you already have a Nebula subscription and you want to gift one to a friend or a loved one, you can also now do that as well with a gifted subscription, with the same discount applied by following the link down below in the description as well. It's the absolute best way to help support what I'm doing here on Real Life Lore, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, bro. Oh my god. Okay. This took way longer than I thought it would. Jesus Christ. Somebody should do somebody should make a project out of this. I'm just curious, okay? All right. Earlier we went over the some of the Supreme Court stuff and the current decision for USAID. I would say Supreme Court cases in general, especially when we're talking about like funding mechanisms from the government, or like who's getting paid what, and like what a TRO is, and like preliminary motion, like this is all like pretty complicated, pretty dry stuff that I would say the average American probably doesn't have a great understanding of or even care about. Despite that, one of the things I've complained about over and over again is that MAGA is so good at like having this consistent klaxon blaring for whenever they need to get on board with a particular message. And it feels like there's just like an unbelievable amount of resonance whenever they say something. I thought there'd be like 5 or maybe like 10 accounts of this, and I'd be interested. This is just, there's just like 2 people linking chat for like 10 minutes of investigation, okay? The followers on all of these accounts, this is like wild. I feel like over half of these are bots also. There's just no way that so many people are aware of what these decisions are, what they mean, like how, like there's just no way. Hold on. Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett has ruled that it is unconstitutional to stop giving free money to foreign countries. Amy Coney Barrett was a huge mistake. She hates Trump, and she hates us. Okay? 95,000 followers. This account has gotten their tweet out. Tell me this doesn't scream, I sold my soul to the devil. ACB's look of absolute disgust and heartbreaking anguish at the death of her own morals is palpable. 99.6 thousand followers. Amy Coney Barrett has turned out to be a horrible choice for Supreme Court Justice. Why is she almost always siding with the far-left judges who hate America? I regret ever supporting Amy Coney Barrett, Evan Kilgore, American flag, true American here, I'm sure. 110,000 followers. Kylie Jane Kremer. I advocated hard for Amy Coney Barrett and was even at her official ceremony at the White House during COVID. I admit I was wrong about her. We aren't all perfect, but should be willing to admit when we made mistakes. 110.9 thousand followers. March for Trump. Hey, that was the J6 insurrection, by the way. John Strand USA. Amy Coney Barrett is an absolute disgrace. 116,000 followers. Every single one of these tweets, by the way, was today. All of these are March 5th. Okay? It would be nice to know who recommended Amy Coney Barrett to Trump. She's clearly uniparty, cult trash. Uniparty? Do we use that?
The last to reply was Lord Elian. Well, at least your messenger came back with his head intact. Your wife probably would have come after you with an army of her own if she found out you had sent her other brother to deliver the message. You look down to read the parchment. Bitches, it begins, and you notice he didn't use the word Lord in his message. Already it looks bad for you. I'm writing in response to your message, so I will make this brief. No, there cannot be peace. You will give me all your lands and resources, or you will surely die. That being the last letter, you humbly say a prayer to the god of war, then call all the armies at your disposal to march. Up until now, you have been going easy on everyone, hoping they will change their minds and offer a peace. Now you realize that it cannot be so. Taking one last look at your castle, you begin to march upon the other lords, with your thoughts spent on death and destruction.
In the U.S., is that the Uniparty? I guess I've heard some people say this. Was it Pence or Barr? 117.1 thousand followers. 1A, 2A. God, family, guns. Fuck around, find out. America first. Is Justice Amy Coney Barrett compromised?
It's a serious question. I'm not making a statement here.
Wow.
I don't have any.
J.D. Rucker. Thank you. 118.2 thousand followers. Christian, husband, father, patriot. Host of the J.D. Rucker Show. Ephesians, 6:12 applies today. Look how miserable Amy Coney Barrett is after Trump's speech last night. J. Cash, MAGA Queen, 144.4 thousand followers. How awful has Amy Coney Barrett been on the court? R.C. Maxwell, also definitely a real human being, 145.7 thousand followers. March 5th, all of these tweets are within like 4 or 5 hours of each other, okay? I remember when people on here were so happy for Amy Coney Barrett and keep showing her with the white booklet. I said she looked like a fake and shouldn't be trusted. I got attacked on here. Looks like I was right about her as well. American Island Man, 157.8 thousand followers, veteran of Desert Storm and business owner, making liberals cry. Describe Amy Coney Barrett in one word: the Patriot Oasis. Also following 10,000 people. All of these people follow thousands and thousands of accounts as well. Okay, 160.9 thousand followers. Okay, Amy Coney Barrett is not the conservative justice that we expected. From the General _O, we got an American flag. America first conservative. God bless America. Support our troops and veterans. 172.4 thousand followers. Happy Tariff Tuesday. Nice pinned tweet. March 5th, 3 p.m. All within several hours. All within several hours of each other, okay? Mila loves Joe. Mila Joy. Because of the SCOTUS decision, 500 more corrupt judges are going to think it is fine to stop Trump. Amy Coney Barrett is a huge problem. Congress must act swiftly to pass Trump's agenda. Following 86,000 people, 176,000.3 followers. Wife and mom, politically conservative. MAGA, Trump 2025 and beyond. Hashtag America First, hashtag MAGA. Follow me for breaking news. Bannon's War Room. She's a rattled law professor with her head up her ass. Mike Davis on Amy Coney Barrett. Good thing we got Bannon out here. 180.7 thousand followers. That was at 5:45 p.m. Conservatives are disappointed in Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett in her vote in regards to water quality regulations. I first questioned ACB alignment with Trump and conservatives after the Supreme Court's 8/2024 or August 2024 ruling on Arizona's voter citizenship law. Tweeted today, 1:53 p.m. At VV1776, a noble American who loves celebrating the United States independence. Yes. 200.9 thousand followers, following 27.1 thousand people. DMs, no DMs, pure hashtag pro-life, hashtag save our kids, hashtag Second Amendment, 2A, MAGA, shake hands, Maha. I said 200.9 thousand followers, right? Can Amy Coney Barrett be trusted? Is she compromised? 202.9 thousand followers, 54.8 thousand following Wow, what an amazing profile picture. Oh, and look at this pinned tweet. Today's a great day for America. We have a true pure blood equals anti-vax. Gotcha. Is this all just really because of her looking at Trump like he gave her the ick? Yep. Every single one of these is within a few hours today on March 5th, 1:11 p.m. 1:44 p.m., March 5th. Amy Coney Barrett should be impeached. Oh, our good American friend here, Anthony Sabatini, County Commissioner, Lake County, Florida District Number 1. 211.4 thousand followers. Following 3,106 accounts. Okay. Ooh, we have a posted thing here. Wait, is that what he said before? Oh yeah, Amy Coney Barrett should be impeached. Impeach Amy Coney Barrett. This is at 3:22 p.m. today. Impeach Amy Coney Barrett from the Supreme Court. DEI hires are not allowed. From true American patriot in front of the American flag with a kind of American hat. Mike Engelman. American flag right in the fucking name. Okay? America is a constitutional republic, not a democracy. He's not on board with the new bot talking points, I guess. 211,485 followers, 22.4 thousand following. He's following that many accounts. Amy Coney Barrett looks at Trump with disdain. She can't hide it. Tweeted at 12 o'clock today. All of these accounts might even be X-verified. True, these might even be all verified accounts. 290,000 tweets in less than 3 years. Nice. Oh, 320,000 tweets in 2 years. Holy shit. How many? Hold on. Let's just do the math on this one real quick. By the way, 217.1 thousand followers, following 62,000 accounts.
Okay, need to prep myself for morning dentist. I'm in fucking pain.